Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City of Homestead, Florida Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, and it is 5:01 p.m. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Board Member Fletcher.
Here.
Board Member Avulo.
Here.
Board Member Shelley.
Here.
Board Member Roth. Board Member Bailey.
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Faircloth Staggers. Chairman Losner.
Here. All right. Are there any deletions or deferrals tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chair, tab 3 has been deferred.
Thank you. All right. So let me read the COVID statement into the record. The city will hold a hybrid CRA meeting. The public may participate in person at City Hall or virtually utilizing video conference via WebEx events or the toll-free conference call number. Please go to cityofhomestead.com/calendar for specific details and instructions on participation utilizing video and telephonic conferencing. The meeting can also be viewed live on the City Access channel or city website at cityofhomestead.com. Public comments can be made in person at the meeting or emailed to publiccomments@cityofhomestead.com. Written public comments are limited to 300 words per comment. Written public comments on specific agenda items should include your name, address, and the item you would like to comment on, followed by your comment. Can be submitted by noon on Monday, October 11, 2021, and will be included in the minutes. Written public comments on general matters should also include your name, address, and your comment, and may be submitted up until 30 minutes after the end of the CRA meeting and will also be included in the minutes. Next item is tab 1, the approval of the CRA board meeting minutes of September 29th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Board Member Roth, seconded by Board Member Fletcher. Any further discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next item, tab 2, new business, car number 3362, Centennial Management Amended Agreement. Mr. Pearl?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution of the Community Redevelopment Agency Board of the City of Homestead, Florida, approving a First Amendment to Purchase and Development Agreement with Centennial Management Corp. And providing for implementation of the First Amendment.
Ms. Driver?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff recommends the CRA Board approve the attached resolution amending the development agreement with Centennial Management Corporation to extend the time period for Centennial to obtain funding through the Florida Housing Finance Corporation SALE program or low-income tax credits program. The current agreement with Centennial Management allowed for them to apply for the LIHTC funding, which is the state funding, this past June, I believe is when they applied. And just that cycle is the only one that they were allowed to apply for in the current agreement. Centennial believes that their scores were not high enough for them to be approved for that funding and has requested that the agreement be extended to give them an opportunity to apply for the Miami-Dade SALE program, that's the surtax. That application is due on the 19th. And then also to apply again for the LIHTC funding next funding cycle. So the agreement that you have before you outlines that arrangement, and that is what they are asking. I just got a text message from Mr. Sweezy's office saying he's having difficulty signing on. So is it possible to give a minute for him to sign on so he can answer any questions that you all may have?
Certainly. Thank you. Perhaps while we're waiting, we can move on through the other items in the agenda. I believe tab 3 has been deleted. So that just leaves questions and comments from the board. I'll start at my left. Board Member Shelley. Board Member Fletcher. No, not on this item in general for the CRA board. Board Member Avila. Board Member Bailey.
No, Mayor, thank you.
Board Member Roth. Vice Chair Fairclough Staggers. Nor do I. Okay, so we know once we finish this, we'll have an adjournment. Any updates?
Okay, he's on now, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions from the board before we hear from the representative from Centennial? Okay, so Mr. Sweezy, if you could give us your name and address for the record, and we're all ears.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Good. This Louis Sweezy. We have a phone. Louis Sweezy here.
Yes,
you
we
hear
can
me?
hear. Yeah, go ahead,
Okay,
please.
perfect. I just checked in.
Mayor, may I just ask a question to kick them started?
Louis
Vice Chair.
Sweezy, 7735 Northwest 146th Street, Miami Lakes, Florida.
Easy? Mr. Sweezy?
Yes.
Hi, this is Vice Chair Fairclough Staggers. I just have a question for you. Just talk to us a little bit about what the next steps are. We understand you're pivoting to apply for the sale
Yes.
grant. What does that entail, and kind of walk us through that process so that we and the community have an understanding of what your next steps are?
Okay, wonderful. Right now, we applied for 9% credits, and now what we'd like to do is apply for the sale loan. And the sale loan is a program that provides a soft second mortgage from the state of Florida, and you combine that with tax-exempt bonds, and you get a 4% of whatever you spend on the community. That's a qualified basis. You get an tax credits, which have a marketed value to most like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and a lot of other C corporations. And that's the way you raise your equity. And then you get a first mortgage too that's tax exempt with the bonds. And then you have a funding gap, and that helps with the funding gap, the sale loan.
Can you walk us through the
So,
timeline?
They
What is
have
the
a
timeline for
They have
this?
a program. They have a program that comes out once a year through the state of Florida. It's a somewhat of a competitive program. We were successful last year obtaining 2 projects in Dade County with it. And you put in an application and with the state, and it's competitive, like I mentioned, and hopefully we win.
Did you mention a timeline? I'm sorry, I couldn't understand. I know you've applied for this before, and you were successful. We've had that conversation, so I think you may be in a position to be successful this
Timeline
round,
is-
but what is the timeline?
Okay, the timeline is due October 19th this year, and then it takes a couple of months for the state of Florida to score it and take it to a board, and then it goes through an appeal process where other developers could look at your application and try to find a fault in it, and then they try to they appeal you, and all of that could take up to about four months after this process. It's not cast in stone because we don't have I don't have 100% control of that. The state of Florida does.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Board members? Board Member
Mayor.
Fletcher.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Sweezy. This is Sean Fletcher. I wanted to kind of understand what is the difference between this fund request and the previous, because I believe there's quite a disparity between the amount of funds that are going to be provided for this project. Can you kind of explain to us what those differences are?
Yeah, I sure can. The first program is always the most competitive and the one everybody desires the most, and those are 9% credits. And as I was mentioning with the sale program, you only get 4% of your eligible basis in credits, where in the other program you get 9% of your eligible basis in credits. And that's why, it's very sought after. Everybody prefers that. But the bonds, too, they work. That's why the state came out with another program that combines their soft money along with the lower credit amount, the lower equity you could get for it. So to get the sources and uses to work.
Okay, and just a follow-up. Previously, we had discussed the proffer and agreed upon the original offer. So you state that you're not going to be able to, you don't believe you're going to be able to meet the criteria, or your score is going to be fairly low for this year's funding. Do you expect any change if you continue to request this fund in a future out year? The score.
I'm sorry, I didn't completely 100% understand what the question. I'm sorry.
That's okay, we'll try it again. So what's basically stated here is that you didn't believe that your score was going to be high enough to receive the LIHTC funding, but you're going to continue to go after that in a future year. Do you believe your score will change based off of the efforts you put forward, or are they going to be the same?
It's not a score, it's a lottery number. You have to put in the perfect application, and then once you put in the perfect application, then you get a lottery number, and you don't really have any control on that. Sean, I could tell you that we usually win. We have a pretty good track record in winning on these. I could tell you that's public record. And we do put in good applications. It has nothing to do with the scoring on this one, on the 9%. It's all about the lottery number.
Okay, understood. I need to have some further discussions with staff to understand what was provided us here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Council, Board Member Avila.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Sweezy. Are there going to be any changes to the product that we're going to be receiving? Any style changes to the facade or to the building or number of units in regards to changing the style of funding that you're going to be applying for now?
No, everything stays consistent.
Okay. So the style of the property, the units aren't changing. Originally, there was a comment that sale funding was not going to be available, but then the amount of units changed that, and now it is available. And when do you expect to have a surtax final answer on that surtax funding application?
4 months. We should have a pretty good idea within 2 months, and then we won't have a solid answer for 4 months, approximately.
The funding that you applied for now that you don't think that you scored high enough for, what was the name of that funding? It
was called the tax credit funding.
The tax credit funding. And that's different from the surtax?
It's a 9%, the 9% tax credit funding. This is a sale funding, which is, you use this with the state of Florida bonds, and then you then you use the sale funds to gap the funding spread, because one's at a 9% credit and the other one's at a 4% credit, which leaves a funding differential of equity. That's about half the equity.
Okay. And for the application that you already submitted but are thinking you may not get selected for, when do you get the final answer on that application?
As soon as the board votes, that one should be coming up not too far off.
By when?
I don't know. There's no specific date. We haven't heard anything from the state yet. the state gives that determination.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Board Member Roth?
Sure, why not? Good evening, yes, good evening. I'm just guessing that this is simply a question of giving more time to continue the process with Mr. Sweezy and his development group. Is that what we're really talking about? Anybody?
Yes.
So is this simply just giving more time?
It's giving them
Not
more time.
exactly.
No, it's giving them more, you want to speak to that, Matt?
There's an extension of time for additional applications, but by utilizing the sale funding, the city CRA realizes a lower purchase price because the sale funding doesn't provide the same level of equity. So I just want to be clear, yes, it's an extension of time, but it takes the purchase, if sale funding is utilized to close and finance the property ultimately, the city will realize only $500,000 for the purchase price. CRA, excuse me.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, in addition to that, we were informed that the underwriting process for the sale is quite lengthy. So if we get the sale, could be about 18-month underwriting period for it. So when you're thinking about time, you can factor that in as well.
I'm going to just sit back and absorb what I just heard. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So, Mr. Pearl and Ms. Driver, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to be sure that we're all on the same stage here and posture. There's been no final resolution at this point that the tax credit funding will not be granted. And we haven't really been given any clarity as to when that day may come, when we know for certain that it's done. And as I understand it, this amendment came before us due to the time constraints for the time constraints for the sale funding, but that the current contract does not provide the option for our vendor to go forward with another round of tax credit funding. So what this does, it provides the opportunity to seek another round of tax credit, as well as factors in the opportunity, which did not exist under the original contract, to pursue sale funding. So your comment as to sale funding, the underwriting of the closing, is relevant to what I'm going to say next. That even if in the next couple of months sale funding was approved, there's still a requirement for a second application under the 9% tax credit financing, and that if that were awarded, we could, as the property owner, require Centennial to close under those terms rather than under the purchase price provided for under the sale program. And that perhaps, based upon the timeframes I've heard tonight, a future successful application of the 9% funding could in fact close prior to or approximately the same as sale funding that could be awarded in the next 60 to 90 days. Is that a fair assessment?
So the way that this was prepared in order to give the city the best chance to realize the higher purchase price was that while it's permissive and allows them to apply for the sale for the 21 cycle, which is what's due in the coming weeks, it also allows the applicant to apply for the 2022 tax credit cycle. And if prior to the mandatory closing date, there's an award or under the tax credits, even though they've undergone extensive underwriting at that point, we've been advised there's no penalty to them to walk away from the sale funding. And so we have retained the right to make them use the low-income housing tax credit financing if that situation were to arise, so that the CRA would be able to realize the higher purchase price that that funding affords.
Understood. Board members? Mr. Shelley?
Thank you, Mayor. You'd raised a lot of the questions I was going to ask and highlight, because ultimately this contract, to me, giving them additional time to go through another cycle, for the 9% tax credit, that probably makes sense, if we have nobody else knocking on the door, if we're not in a hurry to develop the project, if there's nobody out there we think will develop that particular project. But then adding the clause back in to allow for the sale financing, which we didn't allow the first go around, and we had a lot of discussion as a board about why we didn't want that and why we thought that the purchase price needed to be that $2 million plus versus the $500,000. I'm not necessarily in favor of going that route. I think we kind of stick with what we had already discussed, and if we want to extend the contract to give them one more shot at the 9% financing, whatever that acronym is, I would probably be okay with that, even though I may vote against the entire contract in general, just because I voted against it the first go around with the density issues. But as far as the content of it, I would be more comfortable with that particular progress than allowing them to now go for the sale and potentially have us only receive $500,000. And that process could take a while, so at some point it further locks down. If another developer comes along in the future, we may have to let that process complete before we could then abandon it and go someplace else. So just my thoughts. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Board Member Shelley. And I would tend to agree with you. I'm not really comfortable with the significant reduction in the sale price. And I guess I would ask Mr. Sweezy if he would be willing to execute an addendum that only provides for another round of the 9% low-income housing tax credit financing without provision for the option to do sale. Is that something that would be acceptable?
Yeah, I'll do that. It's just, you increase the probabilities of winning dramatically if you do both, but it's up to the city, and we're happy to do with whatever you all want us to do, whatever you want our company to do.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Roth.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a thought. I'm still a little baffled on both of these scenarios, but so if sale funding goes through, that's a $500,000 payment. And if the other one goes through, that'd be the $2 million payment. So maybe we can accept the sale with an addendum to this contract where the developer pays the city over a period of 10 or 15 or 20 years an additional $100,000, $150,000 a year to make up for that shortfall, so that we still have the sale go through, the property gets developed, but there's annuity built into that contract where the city would still receive the dollars that were in the original contract and exceed that, if depending on the amount of money or time we would extend that contract for. So just another thought, that you can speed the process up by accepting that, but amending the contract to collect more money over a period of time versus the lump sum of the $2 million if the other financing was available to the developer. Just a thought. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Board Member Avila.
Thank you. I like that, that proposal, if that's an option. I also prefer not adding the additional financing option so that we can stay focused on the financing that we want, if this proposal is not an option. And I also don't want to delay the project. I'd like to get the product out there and the housing available for the community. So I also don't know how having multiple applications being submitted simultaneously would not be an issue for the underwriters. I mean, is that an actual option where you can submit simultaneous applications? Mr. Sweezy.
No, I mean, no underwriter's looking at them. What happens is you first have to win an award, and then after that, the state sends you to an underwriter to underwrite them. So usually everybody tries to put in as many opportunities as they can to win. It's very competitive.
But I think to your question, yeah, there can be dual track, simultaneous track sale and tax credit, but there would be no refiling of a new application until the final determination
For the
is made in the
9%
negative
for next year.
on the 9%. You know, you're not going to have multiple same fund
No.
applications pending at once.
Correct, Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Sweezy, are you able to make a decision now as to keeping the price firm at the 2 million, whether it's partial upfront and annuities for the rest, or is that something that we have to?
Well, the only way you could do the annuity, and I don't mind that, is you're going to have to defer payment on the annuity until after the developer fee is paid. Whatever deferred the fee is paid, or you're going to run into IRS code violations, and they call it a waterfall effect, where you have to, within the first 15 years of the project, whatever deferred developer fee has to be paid down and paid in full to be considered eligible basis. So I just wanted to put that out there. Then after that, we could put that down as a, could even put it down as a secondary, make a sale for $2.5 million and make it, it'd have to be subordinated to the first mortgage and make it like a second mortgage, and that could work too, to be paid upon out of installments after the developer fees paid in full, and you could work it like that. Yeah, that's fine too. So, matter of fact, it's a very smart idea for the city.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy that I'm hearing options here, because what I don't want to get lost in this conversation is the fact that this property has sat vacant, often dilapidated, for how long? Do we have a number? How long has that property been vacant?
2006.
Long time. It's in the Southwest community, rarely any development in the Southwest community. And this is an opportunity to bring a great product in the community. So I'm happy that we're talking about options here, and we're willing to do what it takes to make this happen, to benefit the community. So if we can come together with options to move this forward tonight, I think that's how we should proceed, because this community is starving for development, and that property needs to be developed. Nothing has happened since 2006. Thank you, Mayor. So we need to proceed tonight on this with an option that's beneficial for the community. So let's meet in the middle, as I always say.
Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing, given the, unless funding is awarded under the pending application, that under either scenario, unless someone wants to show up and build this project that we've decided we wanted, unless somebody's going to show up and build it out of pocket or with traditional funding, we're looking at 20 to 24 months, probably, before ground would be broken in a best case scenario. Is that a fair depiction of a time frame at this point?
Yes, sure.
And is part of the assignment of the lottery number that, in your opinion, is not favorable, the low number of units or the senior housing component? What could we do to make the project more attractive to the lender, but still lie within the vision of the council for that parcel?
Well, for the 9%, I think you've already increased the amount of units, and you've done pretty much everything on your end there is to do. It's just we just need to submit it and get it in front of the state of Florida.
I'm sorry, you cut out at the beginning. You said something
I'm
about the
sorry,
number of units?
I think as of right now, the city has done, pretty much, they've increased the amount of units so it qualifies for submittal. And I think the city's done a lot on their end for us to be able to submit and get in the, playing field to where everything qualifies for this application. The sale loan is a lot about leverage. So, it's the project that leverages the least is the one that wins. Who asks for the least amount of sale funds is usually the winner on this. So I think the city, we just have to put it in. The only negative to it is the state of Florida requires a minimum of a $3 million loan for sale. So we have to put in $3 million, which gives us which comes out to $28,000 or $27,000 per unit. And that was in the winning range last year. So hopefully it'll be in the winning range this year too.
Thank you. Board Member Roth?
Thank you. Mr. Sweezy, just a question. Do you have to actually own the land, or can you lease the land from the city and still take out the construction loans?
I could lease the land from the city, take out a construction loan.
What do you say? So he can't do it
It's
that way.
easier for the owners and it's a cleaner deal if it's a sale. But it could be either way.
But would it make your process any easier if it was a lease versus a sale?
No.
It doesn't
It's
matter.
easier if it's a sale.
All right, thank you.
Good question, but thank you. We tried.
I think I want to just jump.
Chairman, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Board Member, yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Mr. Sweezy. I have one question. If you were to go after the sale and then go after the tax credit, would you be able to go after it as aggressively to get the tax credit funding, even if the sale was approved?
If the sale was approved, I wouldn't apply for the I would have to go with the sale and move forward with that.
Okay. I wasn't clear on that.
And I definitely recommend take a bird in the hand and just move with it. It's the best.
Now, I'm torn on this because obviously the $2 million would be great for the city, but our community is in desperate need of this project. So if that's our best bet right now to go after the sale, unless any board members have a better idea, I think we should go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Bailey. I think Board Member Avila was next.
I think your question was, if he were to apply for the tax credit again, what could the application be strengthened with to have higher points? And that he didn't answer that question. Mr. Sweezy, if you could answer whether or not, if there were anything that you would change in the application for the tax credit, not the sale funds application, but if you were to reapply next year for the, which one is it, the tax credit, what would you change on the application to strengthen the points that we could get?
Okay, hi, yeah, this is Louis Reese. I don't believe that there is anything we need to do. I think it goes into a pot of 30 other applications and they pick 3 lottery numbers and you just hope one of your 3 wins. So you stand a 10% chance of winning.
So then let me clarify. The lottery number that was assigned really has no bearing on the merit of the project. It's a random assignment that you're in the
merit the application has to be perfect and you have to meet the threshold to get into it. So your scoring has to be perfect and our scoring wasn't the issue at this last application cycle. It was more just the lottery number didn't work in our favor this time.
Mr. Pearl?
I just want a little clarification on something that Mr. Sweezy said, because I think bears on the crux of what we're discussing, which is, Mr. Sweezy, can you clarify, did you say that if you were awarded sale funding in this current cycle, that you would not apply for the 2022 low-income housing tax credit 9% financing?
That's correct.
That's
contrary to the addendum
That's
that's
contrary
before us.
to the agreement and some of the discussions that we've had with Mr. Bilton.
Yeah, Mr. Sweezy,
Right.
we had a conversation with Paul, and we discussed the agreement, and we put in what was asked. This is what he agreed to. So he agreed
I'm
that
just
you all.
telling you, the state of Florida will not allow you to do it. I think he might have been confused with the way, I think he was thinking that if we put in a sale and it's not successful, then we're putting for the 9%.
No,
But you
Mr.
can't.
No, Mr. Sweezy, that wasn't what he explained to Matt and I. And Paul reviewed the agreement.
Board Member Fletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Based on what I'm seeing and hearing here right now, I think we need to table this for future discussion. I understand there's a time period, the 19th, for Mr. Sweezy to apply for this other loan, if that's possible, but I think we need to have further discussions in-house with staff, maybe a workshop here over the next few days that we could possibly set up and get down to the nuts and bolts of this. There's just too many conflicting opinions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Avila?
Thank you. Can I suggest that we include an out clause where we allow for the additional financing option, but that it allows us to take backup offers and it gives us the ability to do the workshops, have further discussions, and maybe change the direction of this? I understand that that's not favorable probably to Centennial, but I think it's an option where we can allow them to move forward as quickly and aggressively as possible with their application, but it still gives us the opportunity to reconsider options.
Commentary, Mr. Pearl?
Obviously, from the city's perspective or CRA's perspective, that would be fine. We'd have to consult with Mr. Sweezy. I think that control over the property might be a condition of his applications, and I don't know how that would be viewed. I don't know how that would impact his application, and we'd have to find out. I don't know the answer to that.
Mr. Chair, I thought I understood Mr. Sweezy to just say that he could do a lease and still submit the application, meaning he doesn't have control of the land. So which is contradictory to what we understood initially. We thought that he had to have control of the land, reason why we went with the sale with him as opposed to a ground lease with him. So would you please clarify, Mr. Sweezy?
Yeah, I'd love to. Control of the land is either an option to purchase, ownership, or a long-term lease on the land, or a contract to enter into a long-term lease on the land. All of that is control of the property, and all of them meet the definition of the control of the property.
Board Member Roth?
Thank you, Mayor. So with that said, I don't want to see this thing go away. If there's an option that you guys can work out and bring it back to us with a time certain on it, maybe next month, that is specific to the sale part of it, financing part, leasing the property to Centennial for whatever length of time you feel is proper, for an annuity payment each month or each year, however you work that out, of no less than $100,000 a year for a minimum of 20 years, which would give us the $2 million over time. You guys work out the details. If you can figure out a way to get more out of it, that's great. But I think if he knows what we're looking for, I think some of us are gun shy of the lesser of the two amounts, of the 500 to the 2 million. But I think if we can work out an annuity, I don't think we need the cash, $2 million all at one time. And I'm sure the CRA would appreciate, or whomever gets that money, an annuity every year, you can count on it, because I know that these folks will be good for that part of it. And I think then we can probably move forward with this next month if you can prepare all that, if Mr. Sweezy and his group are agreeable to that too. That way, we don't care which way he goes. If he goes the other way and can pay us up front, that's great, but if he can't, over time, we'll get that money too. So to me, I think that's a good compromise to continue the process. Thank you.
Okay, the only caveat to that is we'll miss this sale application this cycle.
There's no time to come back and meet the sale deadline.
And that was October 19th. They had to have this
Correct.
done by, so.
Correct.
Well, there you have it. I don't know what else to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, perhaps at this point, at this point, it's an academic discussion about that this addendum would be acting proactively because there is not a final resolution on the receipt or the award of funds under the tax credit. And we talked a few moments ago about perhaps just entering into an agreement that, for now, if Centennial is willing to go forward tonight on that basis, to go ahead and amend the agreement to provide for the opportunity to go ahead and apply in another round for the tax credit financing, since sale is apparently not in the cards at this point. That gives us the opportunity to, in the coming weeks, talk about long-term ground leases and installment payments versus an outright sale of the property. But as of now, there's no obligation to go forward if tomorrow morning the final resolution was issued. We would be, in effect, starting at ground zero tomorrow morning. Anyone have a motion in mind?
Let me ask a question to the attorney.
Chair, if I'm Mr. Sweezy, would you be comfortable going forward if the sale is approved to agree on those annuity payments?
Yeah, I will, with the caveat, yeah, I sure will. The only caveat that you'd have to make to it is that the payments would be worked around the tax code to make sure that it falls in line with required. But I have no problem with that, Commissioner.
Do you have a ballpark of when those payments would start?
Not till we finish underwriting, but it would start probably somewhere around. I have no idea. It depends what the total expense of the project is and what the shortfall is going to be on it, and then you have to use your cash flow to first pay down your developer fee. Then after that, I don't mind that the city, we do $100,000 a year to the city after that.
Could it be a year? Could it be 5 years?
It could be 5 years. It could be 1 year. It could be 1 year. I don't know.
Well, I would be comfortable making a motion if we had at least a little clarity on that.
Well,
I understand you don't have it, but
yeah, but why don't we just say within the first 5 years? And then if we run into problems, we'll come back to the board, but I don't foresee any more problems in that.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble.
if we can make a motion to approve going forward with the sale tax and having the annuity payment start within 5 years, then I'm comfortable making that move.
What I'm understanding then is that if Centennial availed itself of the sale type financing, that the purchase price paid at closing would be the $500,000. And within 5 years of that closing, an equal stream of payments of, and I hate Member Roth suggested not less than $100,000 would be payable to the CRA over the number of years necessary, the 15 years to capture the $1.5 million that would not be produced at closing under a sale type funding. Is that correct?
Yes.
Remember, Roth?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to suggest, is that if he goes through the sale financing, we structure the lease in a way that the first $500,000 that he are able to pay the city comes at the beginning, and then we structure the lease thereafter, whatever that is, because at that point, it's not a sale to him, it's a land lease at that point. So there has to be a distinction of what that payment of $500,000 to the city is going to be. It'll be a down payment on the lease or whatever you want to call it, but it'll be that and not a sale to Centennial and Mr. Sweezy's group. That's what I mean. I'd rather them purchase it, but it doesn't seem like we can make that happen under these circumstances and make everybody up here happy. So we're just trying to make sense to keep this thing moving forward so that everybody's comfortable and the city receives rightfully what it's owed or due. So that's how I would go for it. I would second that motion if that's the way Mr. Sweezy will go forward with this as well.
Oh, I envision this as an installment sale, not a lease. I mean, I think it's too much tonight to do that kind of
Installment sale would
amendment,
be the best way.
to do that kind of amendment on the fly, but for tonight's purposes, we could approve an agreement as presented that still obligates Centennial, even if they receive sale approval, to go forward with that round of tax credit, as is funding, as is before us tonight. And the addendum to this addendum would then be, provided, however, if this closes with sale funding, the purchase price is going to be the $2.073 million, payable as follows: $500,000 at closing, and then commencing not later than 5 years from closing, 15 equal payments of X $100,000.
Couple of questions. The first one is for Mr. Sweezy. The city's interest in such an installment plan would have to be securitized with some sort of note and mortgage to make sure that we get paid. And I'm curious as to what impact that would have on his ability to close the sale financing, because the city's interest, I mean, would that interest need to be subordinated? What to your developer? What does that need to look like for you?
It would just have to, it's common to have subordinated debt on these structured deals, so you just have to subordinate to the first mortgage and the sale loan, and and that would be it. It's fairly simple. It shouldn't be a problem at all.
So the city, or the CRA rather, would have to be comfortable with having its debt for the balance of that purchase price for the installment plan be subordinated to the other debt that's on the property. And I want that to be clear to you all as you make this decision.
Thank you. Comments? So, but the motion before us, to clarify, is, I guess, what I characterized, that if he avails himself of sale funding, there will be an installment payment over a period of years, starting not less than 5 years, which went to your question. Are we comfortable deferring that stream of income on the basis of a second or third mortgage to the CRA 20 years out?
And you're going to be subordinated to their other debt obligations. Those will be satisfied before the debt obligation to the CRA would be satisfied. So I want to be clear about the mechanics of what's being proposed and how that would work. And judging from the earlier part of the discussion, inclusive in this amendment then would eliminate the obligation, since Mr. Sweezy has indicated that it would not be possible to pursue the 2022 low-income housing tax credit funding if he were awarded the 21 sale funding. Is that correct?
Did he say it was impossible or that he would choose not to?
He said that the lenders would not allow it. Can we do a 6-month extension? Allowing for the sale funding as a lease option so that we're not in a second lien position?
If this were reframed entirely as a ground lease, then perhaps the lease payments would not be considered a subordinated debt obligation, but we're starting from scratch at that point. And
I don't see how that makes a big difference one way with the financing of this. It's best to keep it very simplistic and just do the second mortgage. I would think would be the easiest and most simplistic for the city and for everyone else and all the other lenders who lend on this.
Yeah, it's the simplest, but
And
it's
all the other
heaviest.
lenders are very sophisticated to subordinated debt, so they wouldn't have any problem with it.
Subordinate financing is the riskiest we can take, and I don't think I feel comfortable with that. I think I prefer the idea of switching it to the lease agreement, which, I mean, if you guys can figure out that lease agreement within the week, he can still submit it on Monday. It's a couple of addendums. I have faith in you.
Mr. Pearl?
well, I don't think it's a couple of addendums. I don't know how it would implicate, any other financing source. Are we saying that are we amortizing all purchase prices instead of, let's say it was the low-income housing tax credits financing, in which case?
What would you do, a 99-year lease? I mean, that's what the lenders are going to be looking for.
He needs to have the equivalent of ownership.
You're going to really, to me, a lease is only going to complicate things. But I don't recommend it, but I don't know. I think Commissioner Roth really came out with a win-win for everybody here. Is the subordinate debt with the idea of the city getting its purchase price. It's a much more favorable negotiation for the city, in my opinion.
I have a clarifying question. If there was a foreclosure, for instance, could we get wiped out?
Yeah.
Yes.
But I can tell you one, because this is Louis Weesey speaking, and I've been doing the tax credit program came around in 1986, and I've been doing deals since 1987 with the state, and I've never seen a deal get wiped out in South Florida ever. I've seen some in little small counties and up in the north end of the state, but I've never seen anything in a large county get wiped out.
That was my follow-up question, is what is the likelihood of getting into that type of situation? So
Not the same as winning the lottery. It's fantasy time.
So I would want to defer to our counsel and see, if the research is there and it supports a low risk factor, then I think the subordination is the best option given the circumstances. But I don't necessarily want to give an extension for 18 months. What is the time extension that we're considering here?
An additional application cycle. So presuming that we were not approved for funding, and some of this is, it's judging by cycles because we don't control the dates of the cycles. So it would be permitting him to apply for 2021 with the possibility of permitting him to, again, apply for 2022 for both if neither were funded in the 21 cycle.
6 months enough to go through the first cycle at least?
There's no way for us to know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I know Board Member Roth has a question. Mr. Sweezy, do you have an estimate of what that number is for, I believe, what you called the eligible basis? What would that what number is that percentage going to be applied to?
It's everything. It's pretty much everything but your marketing, some in your land cost, and some of the land improvements.
But for this project, do you have a dollar
Everything
figure?
else is. Do I have an idea what that is? Sure. I sent the sources and uses to Sandra. I can pull it up real fast. But yeah.
Yeah, what I don't get is that at 9% tax credit financing, the price is over $2 million. And at a little bit less than 9%, the purchase price goes down by 75%. I'm trying to figure out how that math works. And I come at this, that this is a cursed piece of property, conceived in corruption, born in corruption, and has been languishing for 15 years. And, you talk about what's the likelihood of a foreclosure. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen to this piece of property. Trust me, it will happen to this piece of property. But again, I want to go back to that it seems as though unless we build it or somebody decides to build this out of pocket, nothing with any proposer could conceivably happen for 24 months on this site. That's what we're faced with. Let's face reality. And I share the Vice Mayor's concerns. And if she hasn't already, I know she's going to join us by phone in a few minutes. So, let's not kid ourselves. We're looking at 2+ years groundbreaking unless somebody wins the true lottery and shows up and does something altruistic. And the more we get into these machinations, the more difficult it's going to become to meet that deadline. For myself, I'd like to keep this under contract, and I'm not comfortable putting us at risk for a lower sale price at this point. But we do have a motion that I don't think has been seconded.
I think I did second it, but now we had a lot of more debate. So what just to clear this all up for us, so that I understand what we've said and what we've come up with. We understand that if we do a purchase and allow them to make payments beginning in the 5th year, if that's acceptable to all the entities that are involved, we would be in a 2nd or a 3rd place as a mortgage holder. But if we act as the landlord for 15 or 20 years, $500,000 as a down payment towards the contract to lease. Lease payments begin in year 5 or 6, whichever is acceptable to any of these agencies. And then at the end of that 15 or 20-year period, based on $100,000, $150,000 a year, whatever the payment will be, could we then, after they've successfully made those lease payments, deed the property to them and give it to them? Without us being in a 2nd place or a 3rd place in a mortgage in case of default, we would be in a position where we could take swifter legal action if they were default on a lease.
Could we? Yes. Could we by next week? I don't know. I also don't know the IRS implications of the lease payments, in terms of, Mr. Sweezy raised that the developer fee needs to be completely realized before, he construes this as a waterfall provision, but before the remainder of the city's anticipated purchase price would be put out. If it were structured as a lease and those payments were mandatory. It wouldn't be a waterfall provision. I'd have to review IRS guidelines and do some research. I don't know that the 5-year wait period would be required. I don't know if the same strings would attach to that. But, you know, we're throwing around a lot of ideas at the last minute, and some of them are very good, but we've got a finite amount of time to come to a decision on this and implement it in the next few days. So if you want us to go back to the drawing board, we can do that. I'm happy to give it a shot, but I don't know the answers to all of the questions tonight. This is, we're evolving from what was proposed to maybe a different deal structure altogether, and we're going to have to look, you know, there's always going to be things that come up when we make that kind of transition.
But in reality, today's Tuesday, and we would have to act by Friday in order for the application to be filed Monday. Is that, do I have my days right?
That's correct.
We have a motion and a second on the floor, but is it accurate to say we don't know whether that would even meet the IRS regs for this kind of financing and this deal? Is that correct?
Well, I don't know. We'll have to do some research. I think that Mr. Sweezy seems to believe that it would be acceptable provided that the developer fee was paid in full, and so there would be provide for deferred payments on whatever that schedule is. But in the interim time, if it took more than 5 years, I hear that that's a number that seems like the council is somewhat amenable to, but if it took longer to realize the developer fee in that time frame, and IRS regulations, in fact, do require that that be fully realized before these payments are made, how far out are we willing to go? I mean, there's just been a lot thrown out on the floor tonight.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
Can someone clarify the motion?
What I heard
Restate the motion, please.
is that we would be amenable to accepting the sale funding if a $2 million purchase price could be realized with $500,000 down and $100,000 per year on an installment plan, provided that the $100,000 did not begin, that payment schedule was no more than 5 years out, that the council is okay with that debt, that $1.5 million debt on behalf of the developer being subordinated to their other loan obligations, and that in addition, if sale funding is awarded, then the selection, the provision in the current proposed amendment for where the CRA retains the right to direct the developer to take the 9% financing and apply for the 9% financing in the 22 cycle, regardless of whether sale funding was awarded or not, provided that they had not yet closed, that we're willing to forego that and just accept the sale financing under these terms and conditions, with the full $2 million purchase price with a deferred payment for $1.5 million at $100,000 a year, commencing no more than 5 years out from the date of closing. Does that sound like what everybody discussed?
I have one additional question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Sweezy, can you delay those developer fees for any reason, or is that something that's scheduled once construction starts or the project's finalized?
No, those are IRS guidelines you have to go by to qualify for the credits. It's called a waterfall effect.
Okay, so the IRS guidelines give specific timelines depending on the project of when those payments have to be paid in full. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
I'd like to see the motion stay as long as we can find out in the next couple of days what those guidelines are.
For clarification, so we'll move forward and try to make these amendments. Is it the intent of the board that the board would meet again to reconvene and review this? What is ultimately decided, or what we can agree to on paper? I understand the terms, but to actually approve the amended agreement? Or to defer authority? It was unclear.
So as I understand your question, you're asking us to, A, give you affirmative direction to go redraft. And the second question is, are we comfortable finally approving a yet-to-be drafted agreement, or do we need to come back here before the deadline for filing? Is that in a nutshell?
That's it in a nutshell. One of my concerns is, as we go through this, do we discover that something else is, that may become problematic, and I wouldn't want to execute the agreement and make a final determination, given how open this discussion has been, without the board having seen and blessed the final agreement. I had some
Pretty
concerns.
comfortable thinking that we're going to have to come back.
Okay. Well, we'll do the best we can to draft in the next couple of days. And then we'd be looking at what, in terms of a meeting, we only have until, it has to be done before then. That's our, so,
Before
I'm
we
sorry,
go
the
forward-
deadline is Tuesday, the 19th?
Tuesday.
Is
Yeah.
that correct?
So as the mayor said, it would have to be Monday.
So, Monday.
Tuesday the 19th, that could be done, yeah.
So we'd have to reconvene on Monday.
Mr. Chair, we have a meeting, if I may, we have a meeting scheduled on the 20th, so should we move that meeting to Monday, or?
And staff get that together and have that ready to go?
I
Monday.
think the biggest challenge at this point is legal in terms of being able to do that, which I think is a tall order. In terms of the meeting itself, the other item we could bring Monday, but I think the bigger challenge, as I say, is Mr. Pearl. Because there's a lot of unknowns in what he's going to face from a legal perspective, and I do know he'll do his best, but
We will do our best to get this squared away by Friday for an agenda for Monday.
Good. Quick question. If the contemplated amendment is passed, and this deal in fact closes on those terms, let's just do some quick math. That's 2 years out, plus 5 years is 7 years. And then we're talking, what are we talking, a 15-year payout? Does that exceed the current life of the renewed CRA?
We have about 29 years left in the life of the CRA, so
It's just short of
Just,
that.
yeah.
Okay,
just short of.
thank you. Hate to be another fly in the ointment, but that's the curse of having institutional knowledge.
Which, Mr. Chair, then we run into I'm not sure how that plays out with the county, what happens to our money, because I know that if we have debt when it's time to close out, and they want to start closing out 2 years prior, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2 years prior to the expiration. So I'm not sure how this would impact the county and the
Well, that's a
procedures there.
receivable though, not debt.
But I'm not sure if we're still able to receive once we're,
Okay, so that's one of those questions Mr. Pearl gets to deal with between now and Monday afternoon.
That, or we can just accelerate the payments. You know, they can be 200,000 or
We'll
250,
make
whatever
it
it
fit,
is.
we'll make it fit the time frame.
Whatever, yeah, whatever that has to be. Thank you.
All right.
But if I may, we would have to be done by Friday, Matt, correct? I mean, to get this out.
We'll have to have this wrapped up with Mr. Sweezy and prepare to print an agenda by Friday to get it out for a meeting on Monday.
Correct.
All right, so is everyone comfortable with the motion as restated by Mr. Pearl?
I didn't hear a timeline in the motion. What is the actual time being extended on the contract? That's what was originally requested, an extension of time, right?
Well, Yes, so in two facets, though. There's, one is the application for the sale funding, which that 21 cycle, the deadline for submission is next week, thus the, the need for expediency here. The current provision is if they're not successful, then it would be in the 21 cycle, it would be the option of the CRA to allow them to apply for an application for the 22 cycle, or for the CRA to terminate the agreement. So we can allow them to go ahead in a future year if that's what we want, or not.
Do we even need a motion for this? We've given them different directions so that they can come back on Monday, we can make our final decision then?
Well, I think we need to have a conceptual agreement that this is what we are potentially going to approve before they could do all the work.
Fair enough.
Is everybody on board with the concept? I think we can start from there, and if I get direction from that point, with the motion as stated, then I'll go ahead and work with the developer to prepare the amendment, and then I assume everybody's okay with the meeting next week, or no? All right, so I think I've restated the motion to your question of the time. Is your question regarding timeframes? Do you
I'm
need
good.
any
Let's call the
further
motion, Mayor.
clarification? Okay.
Has the vice mayor joined us? Good. Okay, let's have a
Mr. Mayor.
roll call vote.
Yes, I have joined Mayor.
All right, good. We're about to have a roll call on the motion that provides for installment payment of the $1.5 million in the event this closes based on the sale fund financing. Madam Clerk?
Board Member Fletcher,
Yes.
Board Member Shelley,
No.
Board Member Roth,
Yes.
Board Member Avila,
No.
Board Member Bailey,
Yes.
Vice Chairwoman Faircloth Staggers,
Yes.
Chairman Losner.
No.
The motion carries.
Thank you. You've got your marching orders.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Driver, anything further?
No, Mr. Chair.
Madam Manager, anything further?
No, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Pearl?
No, sir.
So potentially 5 o'clock Monday, the 18th?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, I suppose. All right. All right, no further business. Do we have a motion to adjourn the CRA meeting? Moved and seconded, all in favor? It's just a couple of minutes and we will start the committee of the whole meeting. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call the City of Homestead Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, October 12th, 2021, and it is 6:21 p.m. The city will hold a hybrid Committee of the Whole meeting. The public may participate in person at City Hall or virtually utilizing video conference via WebEx events or the toll-free conference call number. Please go to cityofhomestead.com/calendar for specific details and instructions on participation utilizing video and telephonic conferencing. The meeting can also be viewed live on City Access Channel or City website at cityofhomestead.com. Public comments can be made in person at the meeting or emailed to publiccomments@cityofhomestead.com. Written public comments are limited to 300 words per comment. Written public comments on specific agenda items, including your name, address, and item you would like to comment on, and your comment, can be submitted by noon Monday, October 11th, 2021, and will be included in the minutes. Written public comments on general matters, including your name, address, and your comment, can be submitted up until 30 minutes after the end of the Committee of the Whole meeting and will also be included in the minutes. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Avila,
Present.
Councilman Shelley.
Here.
Councilman Fletcher.
Here.
Councilwoman Bailey.
Here.
Councilman Roth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Fairclough Staggers. Mayor Losner.
Here. Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or deferrals, Madam Manager?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Tab 4, Car 3215 is deferred.
Very good, thank you. All right, our first order of business is the approval of the September 13th, 2021 Committee of the Whole minutes. Do I have a motion for approval? Moved by Councilman Ross, seconded by Councilman Fletcher. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item is tab 2, motion to place car number 3364 on the council agenda, settlement of claim. Is that you, Mr. Pearl, or is that you, Madam Manager?
That's me. On July 23rd, 2021, the wastewater treatment facility plant was struck by lightning, damaging 19 UV system control board cards. As a result, the city submitted $123,269.55 claim to its property carrier. The city's first layer of property insurance is splitting 50-50 between Westchester Insurance and Axis Surplus Insurance Company. They are sharing the loss after the $50,000 deductible equally, requiring the city to execute two proof of loss equaling $73,269.55. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to accept the property damage settlement offered by Westchester Surplus Lines Insurance Company and Axis Surplus Insurance Company concerning lightning damage to the wastewater treatment facility plant on July 23, 2021, and to execute settlement and release documents.
Thank you. Anything further? Okay. Questions from council? Anyone online or in public like to speak on this matter? I'll close the public hearing and ask for a motion to place this item on the council agenda, the settlement of claim, car number 3364. Motion by Councilman Fletcher, seconded by Councilman Shelley. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item is a motion to place car number 3298 on the council agenda, the 2022 General Program Support Grant for the Seminole Theater. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. The City of Homestead applied for and has been awarded $74,774 grant from the Florida Department of State Division of Arts and Culture for the Seminole Theater. Staff recommends that the Mayor and Council approve the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement and establish a budget for a grant award of $74,774 from the Florida Department of State Division of Arts and Culture for Seminole Theater programming. The grant requires a $74,774 match, which will come from the currently funded Pinnacle Venue Services contract.
Thank you. Any initial questions or comments from council? Okay, any questions or comments from the public? Would anyone like to speak on this matter? Okay. Madam Manager, what's contemplated to be funded here? Is this the cost of bringing shows here, printing programs? Help me understand what is intended here.
Actually, this is a grant that we get every year. The only real difference this year is that we got more money. And it is limited to what's outlined in page 1 of the exhibit. It's limited to the productions that are being done, the copies of event programs, and the introductory package of requirement includes timeline of grant activities for the grant period, calendar of events. These are the things that they'll have to supply, the calendar of events, the season schedule, and grants management, completion confirmation. So again, it's something that we've done every year and have been able to do, so it's a benefit to the Seminole Theater.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further questions, do we have a motion to place this on the council agenda?
Move it.
Moved by Councilwoman Avila, seconded by Councilman Shelley. All in favor? Any opposed? Next item is tab 4, motion to place car number 3215 on the council agenda. Okay, that's the one you deferred. Okay. Next item, tab 5, discussion, car number 3377, the RFI response to the 163 notice. Madam Manager, have at it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On June 18th, 2021, the City of Homestead issued a 163 notice to alert interested parties of the city's intent to dispose of an interest in the approximate 16 acres of real property on the southwest corner of US 1 and Campbell Drive, known as Old City Hall, for the purchasing or redevelopment or rehabilitation. Responses were due on July 19th, 2021. At the August 3rd, 2021 Committee of the Whole, the Mayor and City Council discussed the 5 responses and directed staff to issue a request for additional information to the respondents. The RFI was issued on August 10th, 2021, and the responses were due by August 27th, 2021. 2 of the 5 initial respondents submitted information in response to the RFI. The 2 responses attached to this item are from Related Urban and Housing Trust Group and Flux Collective. Both propose mixed-use development with residential and commercial components. As part of this car item, staff has included the actual RFI responses as well as charts summarizing each of the responses. If there are specific questions, staff can refer to the chart, and also representatives here from both Related Urban and Housing Trust can answer questions that you may have.
Thank you. Council, do you want to open the discussion? I believe that representatives from both of the proposers are present. Let's just go down the line and perhaps get our questions and concerns out on the table and then give the proposers an opportunity to address those. Councilwoman Avila, let me start with you to my right.
Are there any presentations prepared to go over the changes to the designs as initially presented to now?
No, actually, what we were asked to do, Councilwoman, was to just look at the proposals and outline what each one proposed. And that's what the chart represents. In fact, we were able to check with the respondents to make sure that the chart that staff created was accurate and accurately stated what they had submitted. We did not make any comments on it, or we did not make any scoring on it. We really just listed the facts.
My understanding is that there were some changes to some of the proposals. So are these questions that were answered based on the old or the revised?
So, Councilwoman, you are correct. The respondents did submit additional information, which is all included in the agenda packet item. And as the manager stated, there are representatives here from both groups if you have any specific questions related to their proposals.
Thank you. I'd like to hear their responses to some of my colleagues' questions, so I'll pause for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, so I guess to the proposers who are here, I guess the first question on the table is what are the significant changes that were submitted in response to our prior meeting and the request for clarifications issued by staff. Let's hit those high points. Councilwoman Bailey. Councilwoman Bailey with us?
Thank you, Mayor. Hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to start by thanking staff and both of the applicants. I am incredibly excited about seeing something on that beautiful piece of land, and both came back with some very, very amazing layouts and ideas. I love all the community pieces that you've put into it. I think the biggest questions for me right now is how the two differentiate as far as the density, the percentages that they'd be able to provide as market rate versus affordable housing. And then a follow-up to that is I do not understand what the difference of the value to the city would be, whether those would be market rate or affordable housing. If maybe somebody from staff can speak a little bit on that, I would really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Was that it for the moment?
Mayor, what we can do is, based on the charts that are included in the
Yeah,
agenda.
thank you, Mayor.
We can read what was proposed for each of them. We can start with the residential and the type of units. I think that would answer the Councilwoman's question, because it's just stated in the chart. I think that's the best way to do it.
And why don't we do this? Why don't we gather up all the questions, and then we'll just go through them at once, and if either the proposers have an issue with staff's interpretation, we'll deal with that then. Councilman Roth. What's that? Okay. Vice Mayor, are you with us? Okay, hopefully she'll join us shortly. Councilman Fletcher?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not a whole lot of questions right now. I want to kind of hear, the respondents give us a little briefing. I do have some clarifying questions I might have at that point in time, but I'd like to hear what they have to say.
Thank you, and Councilman Shelley.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, not a lot of questions. I've got comments once we get to that point, and I'll kind of be happy to weigh in with where I kind of feel right now. But let me hear some of the answers and questions back and forth, just to make sure I have all the data before making my decision.
Thank you. And for the moment, let me...
Mayor, if I may?
Sure, please. Glad you joined us.
Hi, I'm here. Like my colleagues, I have a couple of comments, not too many questions at this point. I would prefer to listen to the applicants, and then I'll weigh in after.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Glad you were able to join us. Hope all is well. Again, I think someone said earlier, to staff and to the applicants, I think the charts that were compiled, you heard our questions about this momentous project when it first came before us. Outstanding job in the way they were first presented to the proposers, and I think very fair and transparent and comprehensive in that you were willing and actually did give each of the respondents an opportunity to weigh in and be sure that they were comfortable with or express any qualms they may have had in the way you presented their answers, the way it was compiled and presented. And I think as a starting point for discussion, that is very, very beneficial. This is probably one of the most momentous things that this and the next council will ever take on in the next 2 to 4 years. So I guess then if we'll go to staff first to address the questions by council, and then we'll have the proposers weigh in.
So, Mayor, as I mentioned, I think the best way to do it is to go right to the chart and read what was submitted. And I think based on the questions that we just heard, the best thing to read for both proposals is the site plan and then the retail and the commercial components. So for related urban, the site plan description summary is as follows. City Place Homestead will be Homestead's first Class A mixed-use, transit-oriented live, learn, work, play destination and generate in excess of $386 million in financial benefits to the city. As the master developer behind City Place Doral and City Place West Palm Beach, Related Urban will apply the success of these transformative districts to the city of Homestead. Related Urban will develop City Place Homestead without any affordable housing subsidies from Florida Housing Finance Corporation. And then with respect to the commercial and the retail components, City Place Homestead will include 50,000 square feet of ground floor retail space, including micro retail spaces, 10,000 square feet for several new restaurants fronting US 1, and dedicated community serving retail space. 10% of total retail space set aside for homestead-based nonprofit providers, 10% of total retail space set aside for micro retail at reduced rents. And I'll go from there to Housing Trust Group, Flux Collective, beginning with the same category, the site plan. Site plan design is centered around the US 1 and Campbell Corner, a visual landmark with all commercial buildings running parallel to both Main Street. The multifamily component has been purposely tucked into the interior portion of the site to clearly differentiate between the public and private areas and provide less traffic and noise exposure for future residents. Design trend to shift toward outdoor activities. The commercial component of this development envisions a total of 5 commercial buildings located along the major frontages of both Campbell Drive and South Dixie Highway. Buildings A and B in the site plan are proposed as 2-story anchors to the corner, while buildings C, D, and A are single-story buildings. Significant outdoor public areas for recreation are part of this proposed plan. The commercial office space component occupies the main exposure areas along Campbell Drive and South Dixie Highway. It includes 5 buildings, 2 food and entertainment anchors, 2 retail, health and wellness concepts, 1 out-parcel drive-through, with over 70,000 square feet of leasable area and 352 parking spaces. All buildings are 1-story with the exception of the 2 food and entertainment anchors, which have a second-floor outdoor lounging area for sunset views and nighttime events. So that's the basis of the site plan and the retail commercial components. And there's obviously many more categories, but I think that begins to answer some of the questions that came up.
All right. I think Councilwoman Bailey, and I'm not sure I heard your entire question. You asked about what I heard in the beginning was the difference in the value to the city, and I understand that, but then I think you talked again about the mix of affordable versus market rate. So were you focused on the type of product or the proposed financial benefits flowing to the city? Was that your question?
Right. To play with the names that are placed on the types of product, how that would directly affect the city,
Mayor, one thing we can speak to,
if anything.
a summary of, I think part of the Councilwoman's questions was the type of housing, market rate, workforce, we can speak to that. So with regard to Related Urban, the types of units. All residents of City Place Homestead will feature luxury market rate finishes, including spacious kitchens with European cabinetry, quartz countertops, and adjustable track lighting, large open living areas, many with floor-to-ceiling windows, high-efficiency stainless steel appliances, and in-unit washers, dryers, impact-resistant windows, and contemporary gray laminate flooring throughout the units and ceramic tile floor in all bathrooms. Market rate 50% of total, workforce 10%, affordable 40%. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 square feet, 32 units. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 850 square feet, 197 units. 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 1,190 square feet, 99 units, for a total of 328 units. And with regard to Housing Trust Flux, I have to find the right HTG. The HTG and its management company will work with the Homestead Hospital, the Air Force Base, and local schools to prioritize marketing to local workers. The addition of unrestricted market rate units to complement the housing mix can be incorporated into the program with some additional density to maintain overall feasibility. The rents provided below are an average reference, as rents are not yet fixed and will be ultimately determined by factors during underwriting with our lenders, including market studies required by them. Affordable, market rate, and workforce. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 600 square feet, average $1,017 monthly rental up to $1,357, 40 units. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, 850 square feet, monthly rental $1,221 up to $628, 120 units. 3 bedroom, 2 baths, 1,100 square feet, $1,410 monthly rental up to $1,881, 40 units.
Thank you. Well, I guess then it's the time that we, such as they are, the questions before us, if there are representatives from both proposers, I would invite them to come forward and address any of the issues and provide any clarification or supplement to what's before us. Is there anyone here on behalf of Related? You're on.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, so thank you for the opportunity to address the council. My name is Albert Milo. I'm the president of Related Urban and a principal. I think staff did a very good job of delving into the proposals and preparing good spreadsheets to kind of outline a lot of the different aspects within the proposals, and they did reach out to us, and I'm sure to the other proposer, to give us the opportunity to opine on the work and their analysis and accept any comments that we had. So I think that was a job well done on that aspect. So there are some main points that I think are major distinctions between the proposals. I think first of all, I'd like to maybe address Commissioner Avila's question as it relates to what changes were proffered from the original proposal to the revised proposal. As it relates to our initial submission and our subsequent request for information, we made numerous modifications and enhancements to the proposal. Those were based on some of the feedback that we heard from this council at the last meeting. Part of our cover letter included those enhancements, and I'll just kind of go through some of those now. We increased the office space for Class A medical office space up to 60,000 square feet. We reached out to the Homestead Center for the Arts to create a partnership with them, and we'll be offering them a permanent home as part of their work. It's our understanding that they've been in this community for over 20 years and have never had a permanent home. We reached out to the Seminole Theater, and part of our understanding was also to do promotions within our development. We're going to have a higher percentage of market rate units. Actually, the other proposal has no market rate units. All of their units are between 60 and 80% of area median income. So we will create some type of promotional service and programs within our leasing efforts to help promote activities and programs at the Seminole Theater. We reached out and have a letter of interest from a faith-based organization called Branches that's got a lot of programs to help families with self-sufficiency throughout Miami-Dade County. We're working with them in other locations, and they do excellent work in helping with all of those challenges that some of the lower income residents within the community face. So Branches will be part and will also be offered space within our development. We included in our site plan, revised our site plan to have a stop from the trolley system. You know, that was one of the questions as to how we can further promote access to the historic downtown. We believe that this project should be the main entrance to your downtown. We don't think that this project needs to be a competitor to downtown. Quite the contrary, we think that this could be an enhancement to your historic downtown, and that's one of the reasons why we also felt like we wanted to, and we renamed it also to City Place Homestead. Why? That's that brand, that mixed-use, high-standard, Class A brand that we have built in many municipalities throughout the state. So that's the other reason why we renamed it to City Place Homestead. We agreed to set aside 10% of our commercial retail space, again, for homestead-based nonprofits. I just gave you two examples of two organizations that we're going to provide space for, Homestead Center for the Arts and Branches. We're going to set an additional 10% aside for micro retail. We understand that, you know, everybody gets excited about retail space, and developers throw out large numbers as far as square footages are concerned, and that's great, and it's good to be able to bring the national tenants, and we have those tenants in a lot of our developments. However, what's also important is to be able to properly design your commercial space in order to serve smaller entrepreneurs. Not every business can afford 5,000 square feet, for instance, at today's rates, which is going to be an absolute rent that's going to be beyond their reach. But if we carve out these spaces thoughtfully into smaller spaces, then we can provide entrepreneurs the opportunity to start a business and open a business. Why? Because that absolute rent is small enough for them to be able to afford. You know, we're talking about possibly under $1,000, but you know what? You might be able to get a business going there versus if I tell you, hey, your rent's $20,000 a month. So it's not just about total aggregate square footage, it's also about how you designate that square footage. So that's part of our proposal, another enhancement. We included a hotel. We heard that, you know, that was one of the comments that came from this council the last time, you know, and as part of that hotel, we designed to have the ground floor to be available for conference space. You know, we heard some dialogue as it relates to whether a convention center could be built on the site or not. So we felt, and a hotel was proffered. So we felt like, hey, there's an opportunity for us to potentially put a hotel on site and reserve ground floor space for conferences and other events. So maybe that's, you know, a happy medium to achieve some of the comments that we heard from this council. And we also proffered a rental incentive program for residents, employees of the city of Homestead and of the Air Force Base. So those are just a few, Commissioner Avila, to your question about enhancements. You know, we took that you know, what we heard from this council, and we made, again, I think those are 10 or 11 different enhancements to our initial proposal. Now, again, as I mentioned, there are numerous contrasts between the proposals. Our proposal has, right now, 50% of the units designated as unrestricted market rate, 10% of the units for workforce, and 40% of the units for affordable. You know, the competitor's proposal is strictly affordable. This council just spent over an hour debating what it means to be successful or unsuccessful relying on affordable housing funding at the state of Florida. The competing proposal is wholly reliant on that same funding. Unlike that property, we know that this property has debt. So our proposal was not contingent upon any outside competitive funding, whether we get the proper lottery number, whether we get the proper leveraging number, whether we have to lower the price. We agreed in our initial proposal, and we affirmed it in our subsequent, that we will pay the city's debt at the financial closing of our first phase. That's an immediate savings of over $400,000 for the city of Homestead. I think that would be something that this council can probably find a better use in your next year's budget to hopefully put to other programs that you would want to use. So major distinction, major distinction. Another extreme distinction is the financial incentives to the city. You know, the other proposal gave you two options now in the revised. They gave you an option A and an option B. Option A gives you $10.9 million. Option B gives you $10.9 million. It's just the way in which they pay you. To Commissioner Roth, it's kind of like what you were saying before. Is it an installment land payment or is it an upfront payment? So still the same payment. Now, there's obviously risks of stretching it out and not getting paid, right? Our proposal has been clear from day one. We're going to pay you at financial closing. We're going to get the city off the hook with that debt. So that's a major, major distinction there. $10.9 million. Our proposal during the life of the project is $386 million. We proffered a capitalized lease payment up front. We proffered cash flow participation to the life of the project, to the city. Debt's already paid. $46 million of savings over the life of the project, and $150 million of economic development between the two phases, between the residential phase and the commercial phase. Out of that, we're committing to having $135 million for local contractors. That was another question that was proffered by staff. So it's not about building and necessarily bringing companies from outside. We're going to bring local companies to build. Again, I touched on the community stakeholders. We're setting aside 10% of our commercial space for homestead-based nonprofit organizations, several of which we've already outlined and have committed space to within the development. We increased our office space, and we're going to gear that to medical offices, professional offices. As we continue to have the dialogue in the community, it keeps coming, the same comment keeps coming to our attention, is that there are few specialists, medical specialists in the city. And so if you need to see a specialist, you have a very hard time finding that specialist within the city of Homestead. You know, you have to drive usually towards Kendall to do that. A lot of residents can't. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we actually made more office space with a focus for medical, which was always our focus for office space, but we felt like after hearing from different community stakeholders, we needed to increase that. So we made that 25% bigger than our original proposal on the office space. And the arts, you know, our proposal is heavily focused on public art. You know, everything we do as a company is from our founder and chairman, Mr. George Perez. He's instilled in us that art has the ability to change the quality of life for anything we build. So whether we're building a high-end condominium that we're selling for $800 or $1,000 a foot, which we do as an organization, or we're building an affordable housing unit, We want to make sure that when you drive by our developments, you won't be able to distinguish what's the difference. That's something he's ingrained in all of us, and it's a big, big focus of what we're always going to do in our developments. Our developments stand out because of that, and we put some of those examples in our proposal. As it relates to the old City Hall site, one of the things that I noticed when I was there touring the site a couple weeks ago is the old building has some very nice pieces, like stone. They're kind of like some type of stone pieces, but they're large. They're probably, I would say, 5-6 feet tall by 10 feet wide. There's 6 or 7 or 8 of them. They're attached to the exterior of the building. Caught my eye. I said, worked with our professionals. If, we work on this project, one of the things we need to do is try to preserve those. Those are nice pieces that we can try before the building is demolished to take down selectively and incorporate that into this linear park that we're trying to put as part of the development, because that's one way to also preserve some of the history of the site and also make it an artistic feature that could be unique to City Place Homestead. So those are just some of the distinctions. I'll gladly take any questions from the council, but it's really night and day between their proposal and our proposal. So thank you for the opportunity, and if there are any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Milo. Any questions? Councilman Shelley, Councilman Fletcher.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Milo, for that presentation. I do have one question. In the event that if we wanted to increase the amount of market rate housing, currently you have it at 50%, but we do have the capability of increasing that to a higher percentage. Is that part of your plan if we see sales are going well and you see that there's a need for that here in this community as well?
Yeah, so yes, the answer to that is yes. Can we increase the percentage of market rate units in the project? Yes. That's an excellent question, and it goes to show the difference in the vision between our vision and our competitors' vision, right? So we're gonna see the future of Homestead as a bright future. So you're not gonna read in our proposal that based on the market study and the economics of the area, we feel that you can only charge low rents. That's not what we said in our proposal. If you read our competitors' proposal, you will see that language. Okay, so we believe in the future of Homestead, and that's why we're putting our signature brand and are willing to put our brand on that corner. We think it's a main and main intersection. We think it's something that the city of Homestead deserves to have. We think it's something that could be, again, that signature project that creates that resurgence in your historic downtown, which you guys have been fighting for quite a while. So yes, we could definitely increase from 50%. We can probably go as high as 80% market rate in the project. But yes, we see the future of Homestead as a bright future. We do not see the glass as half empty.
Is that it, Mr. Fletcher? Thank you. Councilwoman Avila.
Thank you, Mayor. If you were to increase the market rate housing, would that reduce the number of units that you would have?
No.
So the unit number would stay the same regardless of the percentage of the housing dynamic?
Yeah, our proposal, again, is 328 units. So we have 128 units more than our competitor's proposal. But no, we would not have to change the amount of units in that. We can remain with that. What it would change is, the $386 million in benefits would go higher, so the city would actually make additional revenue.
And with regards to the makeup of the commercial space, recently we've reviewed some really exciting business ventures coming to Homestead. If in the future there were other opportunities and new business markets interested in coming to Homestead, could we remodel, or is what we build finalized for the life of the project? Could we remodel the commercial space and the setup to be able to accommodate future industries that might be interested?
Yeah, commercial space is always flexible in that regard, so it can always be, used for one type of tenant one day and then switches to another. So we're not prohibited from being able to have that change. I think the part that we would always want to respect is that set aside for the homestead nonprofits, right? And as long as they're serving the community, then we want to make sure that they maintain their space. But in the general open retail space, there's no reason why that can't be, modified into, different type of uses, all within the commercial sector.
Thank you. I'll pause for now.
Thank you, Councilman Roth. You ready?
Yeah, for now, I'm ready. Just a question first for Development Services staff. The 10,000 square foot conference center would equate to how many people could gather in that space?
When we talk about change of use, that's an occupancy point. I'll have to check that with the building official to figure out what the occupancy of a fire occupancy basically of a 10,000 foot a convention space would be. So that I can get back to you on that.
Okay, but on average, if you have a typical just meeting space, is it 10 square feet per person, or is it 50 square feet per person, or just off the top of your head, if you could even, I know, and it's different for different things, but in a cafeteria or restaurant or open space type meeting, there's got to be a specific number that you can use, 8 square feet per person.
I'll have to check, but typically a place of assembly, like a room like this, you average up, you sit in a very small area, but then you've got places for storage that you don't count for it, and you've got places, different parts of the room, so we'd have to figure out how it's set up. I mean, what the assembly space, the actual assembly space would be. So, for instance, this room has a square footage. I'd have to look at what their plans, but it's typically, a handful of square feet per person, for the seating. Okay. And then you come up with the occupancy, like you see. Well, there's a sign in here somewhere that says how many people you can.
You hope there's a sign here somewhere.
There should be a sign, unless the fire department didn't do what it does to everybody else.
All right, thanks.
I'll check right now.
I just want to know, so we have an idea of, is it, 100 people, or is it
I'll check with the building official right now and get back to you probably within a couple minutes.
All right, fair enough. And then to comment on some of the market rate stuff, I'm in real estate, the residential component of real estate. We got a real estate attorney and a mortgage person here, but I deal with people every single day that are looking for places to rent. And if you had 100% market rate at any facility in this city, you could fill it up.
I agree.
There isn't a modern day facility in this city that offers market rate, unsubsidized type housing. And in a place like this, based on this conceptual drawing and others I've seen, you would have no problem whatsoever to fill this place up with market rate rent. And I've even heard some discussions, and I hope it doesn't come to be, because it's not the capitalism kind of way, but I've heard some talks of rental caps in the state, because rent has gotten so far out of proportion that I don't know what that would do to the investors and those that own these complexes that have seen their rents go from almost double in a couple, 3 years. So, but the market rate rent would be huge. And then the other thing, that I'm a dollars and cents kind of guy, and you mentioned these lofty numbers that the city would enjoy. Aside from the $8 million that is owed on the property, can you, in a layman's term, tell me each month or each year how much this development potentially would be paying directly to the city of Homestead as a lease payment?
Yeah. So and that's an excellent question. You know, as it relates to the market rate, we would say that we can go to 80%, we can go to 100% market. We build market rate apartments all the time, so we have no quorums about that. If it's the will of this council that it's full market rate, it's be fine by us. You know, we do that day in and day out. As it relates to the current numbers, the cash flow participation was $94.7 million during the life of the project. That was as half market rate, 10% workforce, 40% affordable. So if the will of this council is to go 100% market rate, that number will obviously be increased. So
let me just stop you for a second, because I know you got more stuff you want to say, but 94 million over the
99
life,
years.
whatever the number was. So that would be a direct payment to the city each year for that particular one thing, about $1 million a year.
Well, it's part of the cash flow, right? It's based on 15% of the net cash flow. And based on our performance that we provided, yes, it totaled $94,756,000 for the life of the project.
For the life. And that's just simply on the
rental,
the residential component of the property.
That's
that
correct.
The city would see each year for basically the life of the project. So a little less than $1 million a year just on that component.
That's correct.
Okay, so there's $1 million to the city each year on that component. So what's next?
And then we proffered the same on the commercial component, which is on the cash flow side, was estimated to be $26 million.
26 million, so another 250,000.
Yes.
A year for the life. So now we're at 1.25 million, based at current rents and current conditions. So I think that's important for all of us to understand and realize that that's a whole lot of money that the city will realize over generations, not just, you know, a payment to sell the land. So I think this is a very smart way to go about that. So I'll rest for now, but I appreciate those numbers, and it's very exciting, you know, to me. Thank you.
And again, that's why I mentioned the contrast that, you know, our competitor's proposal had two options, option A, option B. You get 10.9, that's all you get.
Councilman Roth, to your point, that $1 million a year, or the $1,250,000 a year at today's rates, for the first 15 years will also be increased by about $662,000 a year in principal and interest that we are currently paying on that $8.1 million debt that will be retired. So in the first 15 years in our lifetimes, we're going to see, you know, discounting water, sewer, and other utility issues, a tremendous inflow that can help us work on not just keeping tax rates flat, but lowering tax rates in the future. Now, and Mr. Cordino, do you have an answer for us?
Yes, sir, I have an answer for you. It's 50 people for every 1,000 square feet, says the Florida Building Code. That'd give you 500 people.
Standing or seated?
You could lay them, stack them if you wanted. They don't tell you.
Well, no, because Councilman Roth, I was going to tell you, just as an example, you know, I know you're familiar with the meeting room at the Women's Club for banquet seating as well as theater seating is about 150 people. At the moment, I don't know what that square footage is, but just conceptually for your thinking, that's, you know, extrapolate that out.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, you know, 500 people, is that large enough? And I'm not putting pressure on anybody to build anything larger for us, but I mean, I'm not talking about Miami Beach Convention Center type stuff, because we probably couldn't use that, but 500 people, I don't know that we have any other meeting rooms in the city that would accommodate 500 people. Just a thought, that's all. But thank you for that information.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bailey, before I go to my left, I want to come back and see if you had any additional comments or questions.
I had a question for Mr. Randolph, a little bit more about your plans specifically for this program with the resilience. Are you planning all of those items that are in the proposal, the rain gardens, the shading, the retention areas, the solar panels?
we included a whole section on our green building standards and, you know, some of the resilient components that we will incorporate into our design. That was part of our proposal and what we submitted to staff.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was specific to this proposal. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Fletcher, anything further?
Yeah, I think one last question. I know, you know, with adding 300 plus units to the city, at some point in time, we're going to need additional park space. Can you kind of describe the park space that you have set aside inside your current development, or what you might be willing to help with in the future if we start looking at regionalizing some parks? Thank you.
Yeah, so that was an integral part of our proposal. That was actually included in our initial proposal, and we made a few enhancements to it, but it's over an acre of green area and space. It's kind of like the center point that will divide the residential from the commercial. We feel like that's going to be, again, a place where we can incorporate a lot of this public art, a lot of these different components, some of those panels that I mentioned from the old City Hall. So that will also make this a destination, right? So we don't want it to be necessarily just a park, just, you know, yeah, it'll be a park, but we want it to be a destination park where people want to go there, say, well, that's a place, that park I want to visit there, right? So that was always part of our initial plan, and we made some additional enhancements to that, what we're calling our Central Park.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher. Councilman Shelley.
No really additional questions. Just, you know, thank you guys for listening to what we had to say, I think, during the last meeting, trying to incorporate some of those ideas into the project, you know, making those changes, making those additions. I think it was helpful as far as, you know, bolstering what you have. I'm still not necessarily, you know, sold on density going there and putting residential on that particular property. And I still have some concerns about, you know, the competition factor of the downtown, you know, dividing the critical mass. I think it's a great project as proposed. I like what you guys have kind of built into it and the concepts and the revenue streams for the city. It's the location of it that obviously I'm still battling a little bit with. You know, I'd rather see this type of product in the downtown, you know, as part of a complement to what we've already done versus kind of splitting off that critical mass of bodies. But as far as, you know, what you're proposing, I like, you know, the changes you've made. The other thing too is piggybacking, I think, on some of the other comments, you know, the market rate. You know, I think that's something that we need in the city. I mean, we just approved a project, you know, kind of across the street from this particular parcel that will be market rate. So I was happy to see that. That's kind of really the first market rate type housing or things that we've seen go in there. You know, so I think 100% market rate, if possible, would be more ideal. We have some, you know, workforce housing already here in the city. We have that as an option, but not as much at the market rate. So I would like to see what that would bear as well, you know, moving forward. But that's all the comments I have on this particular applicant, and then I'll have a general comment maybe at the end.
Thank you, Councilman Shelley. And Vice Mayor, your timing is impeccable.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to first start off by thanking both of the applicants for the work and the due diligence that you put into these applications. I particularly like the community benefit and how you folded in the nonprofits on both sides, not one over the other. What I'm still wrestling with is the density, because we've all talked to residents in the city, and what they're telling me is about the residential component, the overdevelopment, 328 units. So yes, the return on the investment, the dollars that will come to the city is great, but quality of life is important as well. So the 328 units, help me with that. How did you arrive at that number? And what can you do to bring that down? Because I can't digest that amount at this time.
Yeah, so the project itself is what's also considered a TOD development, right? You're in and around the bus station there for the bus line. Now, can you do less units? Yes. Now, if you want a project that's going to be significant, if you want a project that's going to make a statement, then you need that balance between a certain amount of residential and a certain amount of commercial because they're going to help that resurgence of the downtown, right? Especially if we go with a higher market rate component. The competing project, even though there are 200 units, it is strictly an affordable housing project. So yes, it's less dense, but it's not going to create that economic vitality at that location. So you have to balance that. Now, if the question is, hey, does it have to be 328 units exactly? No, that's a conceptual site plan that is still subject to, further discussion. At some point, that final plan will be it'll be part of some type of community engagement process and some type of charrette where it'll come here. It might end up being a little bit less. Now, is it going to go as far down as 200 unit? In my opinion, I would say no. I would think that that's not something that would be beneficial for the project and also for the fiscal side for the city, because again, we're treating the city as a true long-term partner, and you're going to share in that revenue long-term for the life of the project. So less units, less revenue makes the project harder to finance because there's less economy of scale, number one, and secondly, it's going to definitely generate a lot less revenue for the city.
I think for me and what we have to determine is what our end goal is. Is this about making money for the city, or is it about quality of life? So as we continue to listen to the other side, I think it's very important for us to keep that. Making money or quality of life. And because you have the amount of units, that's why you're probably able to offer a little bit more because of the amount of units.
Yeah,
But,
it's not a little bit. It's quite a different. There's a big contrast. But yes, I hear you. That's a decision that
Right.
that the council has to make on that for sure. But that is a stark contrast between the proposals. Yes.
Right. I mean, we're here every day on the ground, and in our community is talking about development, residential development, and the density. And I don't want that to get lost in the conversation. But I thank you for what you presented, and looks good. Just grappling between making money or quality of life.
But just in order for us to be able to proffer some of those community benefits, it's some of those additional revenues that allow us to recirculate those dollars to be able to offer some of that community space to the nonprofits, some of that micro reach, some of those other things. So it's that's the balance of making these projects feasible and not having to rely again on outside grants and funding applications and stuff. So that is the delicate balance there. But thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and to all my colleagues here. I want to share some of the Vice Mayor's concerns about density. I mean, clearly, I struggle with that level, and truly, it is a balance between revenue and quality of life, and I think that we can, to borrow a phrase, meet in the middle somewhere. I don't know where that middle is, if it's 250 or 300, but I think we've made great strides here tonight in sending a message to both proposers as well as the community that this is not, whatever form it takes, it's not what I think our community fears from what they see that lines US 1 and Moody Drive that, from our perception are purely affordable housing. And we've got to be very mindful that our community understands that distinction, and that it's not overdevelopment and it's not more of the same, that this is a special corner that's going to get a very special community-oriented product. One thing I did notice with, we'll get to this as we begin to go down the road, and maybe, I don't know if Mr. Cordino has looked at it. Both proposers contemplate units that do not meet our minimum square footage standards. Your proposal, some of the units do. None of the units meet our minimum square footage proposal requirements in the other proposal. But as we go forward, has staff looked at or talked about any of the variances or land use approvals that are going to be necessary on our end to implement whatever's done? I mean, clearly, is there a height variance? Is there a density variance? Clearly, as things are presented now, we have a unit size issue. Do we see preliminarily anything that's really insurmountable?
Well, Joe can respond to that, but we did not do an analysis of it at this point.
Sure.
Yeah, right, so we haven't looked at this, it's not been presented to us in a site plan or anything like that, but my understanding of where we're going with this is that we have the flexibility to create an overlay, and we can do just about anything that the council sees fit in that area. We'll just design a piece of code that you're comfortable with, that they're comfortable with, meet in the middle, and go forward. So we're not necessarily constrained by existing code unless we want to be with this one.
Very good, thank you. I mean, I don't want to get bogged down in land use approvals when these things need to go forward. Mr. Marlowe, thank you, and if the representatives are here and wish to speak, it's time we allow the Flux HGT group to come forward and address our concerns and
Thank you.
make the case for their project. Thank you.
Good evening. Oops, there you go. Good evening. Thank you very much again for giving us the time to take you through a brief summary of our proposal and our responses. Joining me here are both Max Cruz, also from H Housing Trust Group, and Eddie Seymour from Flux Architecture. My name is Delia Tabora. I am the project manager for this development, and so I wanted to take you real quick through some of the main points so that then we can discuss and get deeper into some of those changes that you guys were interested in. So our proposal seeks to create an exceptional destination and experience by combining office and neighborhood retail with modern residential living and amenities, while also creating over 50,000 square feet of outdoor amenities and features. Rather than closing off the site with more streets and a building spread around, we were seeking to concentrate on locating the buildings at specific key points on the site to allow for larger open outdoor spaces and an abundance of natural elements, which eventually became, the overarching theme of our proposal. So we have put forth a proposal that, one, has a smaller portion of the site being used for residential density. That also means, of course, it has a lower density. We're about 12 units per acre in that. That was kind of an intentional decision that we also did not change moving forward based on hearing some of the comments about the residential density there, wanting to be kept at a minimum, as well as wanting to be kept tucked away from the site in order to ensure that the old City Hall site will always be a public amenity and a welcoming place for all residents to use and to enjoy. The proposal will also bring new residential units to serve Homestead's workforce and market rate households, including hospital, airbase, school, and city employees. This, I guess, is kind of a deviation from what you've been hearing, but the main kind of summary of that is that we are willing, as of now, the proposal that you see on there, and that's the reason why in our answers, we answered instead with a range of rents and a range of incomes, because if you look at, the actual facts, the market rate for the city of Homestead, and for this area is actually at the levels that even the workforce units will be at. So overall, we're proffering 20% of unrestricted market rate, with an additional 35 to 40% being those 70 and 80% units, which if you look at what the rents for those are, they're actually above what the market is here in Homestead. So technically, we are actually at 55 to 60% of market rate, or at what you would consider the market rate level, which is what our units are, with the remaining 35 to 40% being affordable. We are also willing to talk to the city and discuss, as you guys were, contemplating the idea of actually doing 100% of it unrestricted market rate. It would, of course, entail a lot of further discussions about what you guys really want to see there, but we are open to considering that as well. Our proposal also provides for a very clear development and construction timeline that sees all of the site and all of the both phases of the site being developed and delivered simultaneously, so that no part is going to be left behind as a phase two that wasn't able to be realized. And actually, that's kind of important with how much space we are allocating to the residential portion. As you know, it would be almost impossible to develop that site with the way we're seeing it without delivering the entire concept as one. So I wanted to mention our construction timeline is very realistic in the sense of taking into account not just those land use approvals that you were talking about, but also the community outreach that after our conversations with some of you guys, we feel that that was kind of the main takeaway and the change that needed to come to the proposal, more so than a site plan change, was kind of bringing all of the stakeholders in the community to really pin down what the best uses for the site would be, so that this can become an actual active site the minute that it's completed. Our proposal also provides financial benefits to the city with options that both extinguish the existing mortgage on the property and provide long-term participation. Of course, it's kind of far-fetched, and our summary that we provided to the city focused on the immediate payments, the immediately foreseeable money. It's kind of tough to oversee cash flow, 99 years from now, and kind of take that all into account, making sure that the calculations, are vetted by someone. So in that respect, we just wanted to ensure that the city was getting the option to either get rid of that loan that is on the property or have bigger long-term participation. Our proposal also supports local nonprofits by providing benefits to spaces that go beyond the site itself. We are actually committing 10% of our profits to go towards infrastructure in existing educational facilities such as Neva King Cooper and the Seminole Theater that may need additional help for these programs, as well as partnering with them so that they are able to use some of those entertainment facilities, the outdoor amphitheater that is provided, and kind of make partnerships with those educational facilities so that they can make use of our development and at the same time obtain help for programs that are existing and that have already been successful for so many years to the community. And finally, we also bring with the proposal the flexibility to accommodate other concepts and uses, again, based on community input and on need, without really changing the main design intent. So our main design intent was, since the minute we looked at this great site, and continues to be, highlighting this site as a public amenity, as an entrance, as a landmark for Homestead. HCG and Flux, we pride ourselves in bringing change and revitalizing communities through quality design throughout Florida. Our vision for this really, really incredible site and location continues to be community-centered and driven by and for the existing residents of Homestead. We stand ready to combine our team's expertise to work hand in hand with the community stakeholders, as I mentioned, for workshops, and so that we can mold this into a development that is meeting that initial intention that we had with making it very public and useful for the community, and ensuring that, like I said, our mix of uses and tenants is going to be active the minute that it opens up and that we complete construction. I'll allow Max to.
Hi, good evening, Max Cruz. Only a couple of things I want to clarify from some of the comments made in the prior presentation, and I just want to just make sure everybody understands this is not going through any competitive application cycle. This is not something, as you saw in your CRA board, where something was submitted, they got a bad lotto ball, let's try to submit for another application. That's not happening here. We had endeavored to look at all forms of financing on this, and we are going to proceed with this development without any form of competitive tax credit application in any way. A couple of other things I wanted to add was when we initially submitted this proposal and we had discussed about providing workforce units and workforce housing, we really were looking to provide housing to all residents of Homestead, not just those that make market rate rents, but everybody, right? Not everybody makes that kind of income. Now, obviously, as Delia had mentioned, this was contemplated to be workforce. That is an average, a median income of about $80,000 a year for a family. So it is very complementary to what a market rate community would be. But obviously, we have heard a lot of what the board has requested or the council has requested, and we are willing to go to 100% market rate if that's what the city desires. We are here to be your partners. If this is something that you want to move forward with as a market rate development, we're going to be here to discuss those things with you. We had heard loud and clear, even before we submitted this proposal, when we were looking at the market and looking at what we can do there, we purposely used 200 units because we did not want to make an ultra-dense community, right? You build an ultra-dense community, you have to park an ultra-dense community. If you provide a convention center, you have to park a convention center. Same thing with the hotel. We wanted to make a community that is open to the public, a lot of open space, fountains, park areas, dog parks. We do not want to put parking garages here. We want it to be very open. Again, if the number of units is something that you all contemplated being more or less, we'll have a conversation, but that's obviously going to make changes to what you could park. And what you park affects how much open space you have for communities, or you go vertical with parking garages. But those are just a couple of things I wanted to, bring up to the council. We're here for any questions.
Thank you, and that's what I'll do, and I'll go in reverse order and start at my far left and ask if there are any questions or comments from council with respect to your presentation. Councilman Shelley.
Sure, thank you. Again, just thank you guys for, being interested in investing here in the city of Homestead and putting together the time and effort to put your proposal together and answering the questions that staff had, so that you could give us a thorough information. I know I had a chance to meet with your representatives as well, so I thank you for taking the time to meet with me and go over kind of some of the ideas and hearing some of the questions and concerns that I had. So just mainly, thank you guys for coming out and participating in this process. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Fletcher.
Yes, thank you. And I, too, want to thank you all for your proposal. I think it was very well put together. We had a discussion on the phone here a month and a half or so ago. I believe that, both respondents provided different options to us. I believe that ultimately, it is going to be an overall decision based on density. And I think that the folks up here are going to, each of us have a different mindset when it comes to what we think looks well at that location. Personally, I think the higher number of units will work well there. We have the bus rapid transit system that's right behind it. We have 3 major avenues that you can go in and out of, with US 1 Campbell Drive and as well as Flagler. So there's a lot of opportunity there for us to provide some of the planning for this. Again, nice presentation. Look forward to seeing where we move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fletcher. Councilman Roth.
Thank you, Mayor. I have the same questions. I can't ask you about a convention center because you didn't mention it. Market rate rent, you heard my spiel already, that I think that this area and this community can support that. The products are both, top-notch products, and I think they deserve market rate rents to support what goes on in that specific area. And then my other question would be the exact same question is, I'm a dollar and cents kind of guy. what's that mean to the city each year monetarily? What are you going to pay us each year?
So from the estimate, and by the way, I mean, again, it depends on what you use as a cap rate, what you use for different variables, but, so what we have
See,
on.
let me just stop you for a minute, please.
Yeah.
Just so we understand. Rent is not based on anything except for an agreement between two people. So you can just tell me a dollar amount. You don't have to get all fancy with me, because in layman terms, how much each year would the city receive in your proposal?
Right, okay, so we've got here for 3.5, like almost 3.2 million in cash flow sharing for the residential component. And that was, again, using the more limited unit mix. So again, if we go to a higher percent of market rate, that's gonna increase substantially, which I guess was kind of what she was getting at with the percentage of market rate being higher. That's increasing, of course, what the city obtains in the end. So what you have here in your proposal is based on a higher percentage of affordable there. So that can change for the better if the city, again, wishes to do more market rate.
So if I heard you right, you're committing 3.2 million per year to the city?
No, 3.2 over the 75-year lease. And then for the component, for the residential component, it's about 3 million for the 30 years.
So
Because it's a 30-year lease we're proposing on the commercial.
I understand. So that's, what, $7 million to the city?
So about, let's see. About about $100,000 to $200,000 a year.
Over the course of the project, the 75 years? Okay.
Right.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Bailey?
Well, one thing I want to clarify for Councilman Roth, that doesn't include the initial payment at financial closing. There was two options that were provided, where when we initially submitted our proposal, we didn't know there was the amount of debt that was on the property, so we had a lower, what we call the option A. Once we heard that there's I think it was about $8,063,000 debt on the property, we resubmitted with an option B, where the full $8 million would be paid at financial closing, which changes a little bit of what the cash flow would be. But I just wanted to clarify, there's an initial payment and then there's an annual cash flow.
Thank you. All right, Councilwoman Bailey, are you still with us?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. What was that initial payment?
Go ahead. I didn't understand what she said. Did anybody catch that?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Okay. What Councilman Roth said about the initial payment. What was that total?
You want to repeat that, the numbers? I'm looking at the applicant. Let me turn their microphone back on. So we've got the retirement of debt up front plus.
So there was two options. There was option A, which would allow a greater cash flow throughout the life of the community. The initial payment was, I believe, $5 million. But there was an option B, where we pay off the life of the debt of the $8 million, and then it's about $200,000 a year to the city.
Did you catch that, Councilwoman?
Okay. I did. Thank you. I really don't have any more questions. Just again, thank you. The overall design is amazing. And again, kudos with looking into the community partners. That would be great assets. And just thank you for all your time that you put into it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Avila.
Thank you. With regards to the incentives after that initial cash payment, is that based on profit sharing, or is that a flat amount? confirm.
The initial capitalized lease payment is a set amount.
No, after that.
No,
Oh.
the cash flow.
That's, yeah, it's the same. It's a percentage of cash flow, correct.
So if it's more market rate units or higher rents or if rents increase, obviously that percentage will increase as well.
Right.
Okay, because I do see here long-term profit-sharing options in both components of the development, so I just wanted to get that clarification.
Yeah.
So it's based on the rent amounts that are collected?
Correct.
Right.
Not on
Yeah.
the retail?
For both. There's a portion of cash flow share for the residential, and there's a cash flow share for the commercial portion as well.
So there's a lot to digest. I think the charts are awesome because there is so much information, and I thank Councilman Shelley for asking to have that done initially. And I want to thank both applicants because I really appreciated the amount of time that we have spent discussing these projects and what we're looking for, and I have seen pretty much everything we've asked for kind of put together in a cohesive way, but varying and giving us different options. And you both deserve transparency and direction. What's going to make my decision is going to be based on jobs that are being created, connectivity that's being provided between this project and our existing downtown. It has to be cohesive. I'm also considering the green space, and of course I'm considering the density. And when it comes to density, for me it's important to consider the difference of density that we approve for landowners to build, and then the density that we get to build that can provide benefits to the taxpayers. So I did share that with you in our meetings that, try to consider raising some of the density a little bit to try to offset the affordable housing versus market rate. I think that corner is prime property, and we should be focusing on market to luxury style property and living. Because doing so provides what I think our city is lacking. We're not lacking retail space and commercial space, but we're lacking disposable income. And residents that live here that have that disposable income to spend at the stores and the businesses and the restaurants that we're trying to attract here. So we can put all the businesses we want here, but they won't survive. And we're seeing that. We're seeing shops close their doors because they just can't survive and they don't have the consumer base. So it's about having a balance between the density and the amount of commercial that we're approving and trying to attract. I think that we have to be smart and strategic on the type of project that we do approve and finally put there. And the numbers make sense. I mean, we have to be a numbers person. Like Councilman Roth said, we have to focus on how much money are we going to be able to put in our coffers, because ultimately this is non-tax revenue that we can put towards reducing our overall budget. And these assets are what we can leverage to make that happen so that we can add more police officers, add more programming, improve our parks and recs, build more soccer fields, all the things that we had on our wish list during budget time. These are ways that we can actually realize them without charging the taxpayers and staying and remaining in control of that, and by modifying the property as the years come and have it serve the community for 100 years to come. I'm leaning towards related, but I don't recall seeing an actual presentation. We initially talked at having 5 applications on the table, then we reduced, and then we did the chart, but I haven't seen a formal site plan presentation as we have seen in the past in other applications. So I think visually, I like your product style better, but based on paper, I'm leaning more towards related. So I think that we still have to discuss this further and have that opportunity that we're down to 2 applicants. We've pretty much filtered out some of the confusion, and I think each and every one of us as council members are identifying what's more important to us. And I think having that formal presentation pictured, visualized with the components is the missing piece of the puzzle for me to be able to make a decision today. But that's where I'm at. I'm hoping that my transparency works for you guys, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you as well for going through this process and putting in all the sweat equity to answer all of our questions very clearly and succinctly. And thank you for meeting with me. You reached out to me early on. I really appreciate when you reach out to me early on, consider I wear so many hats. So thank you very much for respecting my time. I just want to, full disclosure, visually, I am definitely leaning towards HTG. I love your design. I love the concept. I love the open spaces. I really especially love the fact that you're engaging our special needs community and Neva King. That always pulls at my heartstrings. Not to say that the other proposer doesn't have quality nonprofits, because they do, but Neva King Cooper just holds a special place in my heart. My question to you is related. They did a pretty good job at distinguishing between their product and yours and what they have to offer versus what you have to offer. His presentation was great and very clear on what those differences were. So I would like to give you an opportunity to kind of contrast what you're offering as opposed to what they're offering, to give you that opportunity.
Sure, thank you. So again, we, as everyone knows, we had the chance to come back and potentially change our entire proposal to be something different, even not just based on our conversations with each of you, but even that initial meeting, there were, a lot of ideas thrown around. So I think that our approach in coming back at this and listening to you again was bringing forward change to the proposal, but in the form more so of flexibility, because we hear that there's really not a lot of pieces that are for sure put in place. And so we do have the flexibility to incorporate, 10,000, I think we spoke to a couple of you about up to 10,000 or 15,000 square feet of a convention space, which is more like a civic center. That's something that can be incorporated. And but I think that the main difference between the proposals is, and I think it's what you and some of the other members keep coming back to, is that original idea that we had, which continues to be kind of felt in the site plan, which is ensuring that it is not broken up too much, that it is not the majority of it taken up by residential buildings, and also that we are highlighting that corner as kind of a major entrance that says, hey, come here, come during the weekend, there's activities here, and not just, more secluded, kind of private uses in a way where if you go to a multifamily community, you're going to feel less inclined to go make use of their green spaces than if you have green spaces that are out in the open that are specifically designed and, portrayed to be used by the public with activities that are planned and that, again, focus more on the outdoor trend towards retail and the trend towards outdoor activities that we have now. And so we are kind of counting on those elements to be the anchors of the proposal and let the uses and your comments and how much you want. Again, we can change the density. We can increase it if that's something that you guys are open to. We are very receptive to your comments. And I think all in all, we also came back and just made sure that our financial proposal was also in line with what the city needed to extinguish that debt, to make sure that we did not get rid of that long-term participation, which we had in there since the first round of proposals that we submitted. So we want to make sure that we are good long-term partners to the city.
Thank you. Thank you for that. You mentioned that you're amenable to increasing the amount of market rate or going 100% market rate. So that's very comforting to hear. Still, for me, the density is important. Yes, that is in a location that connects to the busway, but the county has had a very difficult had a very difficult time in getting drivers out of their cars. I don't know who up here has to leave early in the morning like myself and stuck in that traffic. All those cars leaving out of Homestead. I left at 7:05. I got to Cutler Bay at 8 o'clock. So to think 328 units, think about the amount of cars. And not all of them are, we're not there yet where they're working in the city of Homestead. That's our big goal, but we're not there yet. So it's going to be very difficult to go out in the community and let them know, oh, yes, it's perfect. It's near the busway. It's a connector. 328 units. So we really, really have to think about that. I think we have two solid applicants. But I'm not ready to make this decision at this time. I agree with Councilwoman Avila that a full-fledged presentation to this board, I think, would definitely be in order. But tonight, as for me, I'm not ready to move forward.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Appreciate it. And I agree with both you and Councilwoman Avila in that respect. And I did not come here tonight anticipating for myself being ready to make a decision to negotiate with one or both of the proposers. You know, again, this is a special piece of property. It's not something that's going to be decided in a couple of public meetings, and I think it is very well appropriate and most appropriate, whether it be the November council meeting or the December council meeting, to invite both proposers to come back, to bring your bells and whistles, your video presentation, to sharpen your pencils with your numbers based upon what you've heard here tonight. I think there's some consensus on at least the type of product. I mean, clearly, density is a big issue for me, and so is architecture. And I'm going to be very candid. I ain't in love with Related architecture, but your stuff reminds me of some Class C strip center in Kendall in 1981. And that is in no way what I would have ever envisioned for that corner. So if architecture is the deal breaker, I'm going the other way. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but buildings are forever. Is this room over the top? Happily so. Yes, and that's not what I expect to be on that corner, but at least for your commercial component, it's just, I know, art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and my age and my genetics just don't warm up to what you're bringing forward. But I'm going to be looking for that balance, the quality of life, the ultimate density, the ultimate height, as well as, and in comparison to, what is the financial benefit to the city. And I'll tell you, I want to look very closely at financial ability and background in both residential and commercial development. I mean, Homestead has had no shortage of hucksters and con men come through the doors of the various council chambers, and we always got left holding the bag. And this is our time to really be brutally honest, like I've been about your architecture. And look, a couple of my colleagues here have stated they love it, and I get that. But we'll get to that point. Ability to perform, ability to get it done as they've represented, and where we can go. So unless I hear something different from council, Madam Manager, I'd like us to get to place them on the agenda, let them go back, incorporate what they've heard here tonight in their proposal, and so that we can be ready to make a decision whether we're going to go proposer A, proposer B, or none of the above, whenever that may be, the November or December meeting. Councilman Shelley, and then the Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so this will probably be my only chance to weigh in on this one, so I'll go ahead and make a few comments before you guys get on to the final decisions here into the future. But looking at both proposers, as my comment stated, and I think the rest of us, I appreciate the effort that's gone into this. On paper, I agree that I think the Related group, has the history, they have, a proven track record, they they have the finances, so on paper, they look very good, and I appreciate the fact that they adapted to a lot of the comments that we had. But I do agree, and I think you guys are taking the smart route, which is to continue to press both of them and make both of them continue to perform and ultimately put together their best proposals with now the additional comments that they've received. And ultimately, that's the best way, I think, to figure out what the best product is that goes there. The one thing I did want to address, because again, my biggest concern always has been, this competition factor with downtown. And I do think that, as it progresses forward, one of the things that I would have liked to see, and I hope that you guys also continue to address, is if this type of product is ultimately what gets built there, trying to find retail product that doesn't directly compete with the downtown, that ultimately complements the downtown. So I like the idea of the medical centers. I like the idea of something that's going to maybe draw people in, or that's going to provide a service to the city and the residents, but that doesn't directly compete with, say, entertainment, which is what we've been focused on in the downtown. That gets complemented by, say, the hotel use or the density, whatever density ends up getting to go there potentially, if that's what this council decides. But then that density would actually feed into the downtown versus staying local on the corner spot. So, if those things can be balanced out, then a project like this could work. But those are just the concerns that I have now and would, continue to have. And so just wanted to put out for you guys to consider as my policymakers, as my representatives going forward, sitting in the audience, as you're making decisions. I just wanted to have the opportunity to kind of lay some of that out there. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Shelley. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just sitting here, I have more ideas that I would like to put on the table. And to be fair, I would love the opportunity to meet with the related group. If you could reach out to me with time. I don't meet with anybody day of meetings. Meet with me in time so that I can have a sit down with you as I did with HTG. I would love to meet with you again. I'm not necessarily sure, and this is for me, the medical component is not a big deal for me. We have tons of medical around here. That is not going to draw people into the community or attract those from the east side over to the west, because we've been receiving emails. We need things to do in this city. So bringing a dermatologist or another medical group, that is not going to really appeal to the greater concerns in the community. And to Councilman Shelley's point, as a means to not compete with the downtown, create opportunities to connect and engage both areas. So I would love to have further conversations with you about that and being smart and what businesses that you're going to fold into this development. Because for me, and the conversations I had, medical isn't it. So I welcome the opportunity to meet with you again prior to our next meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Roth?
Yeah, just one comment. Councilman Shelley, you're welcome to come back anytime and have public comment with us and give us all your wisdom that you've shared with us for the last 12 years. So I appreciate that. Thank you. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you. So is that the consensus of council that we invite them to come back?
Mayor, I
how's
would
it
just like to, I'm assuming, I could be wrong, that you would want to come back to a committee of the whole. It would be too early, I think, in November, because it's November 9th, unless you wanted it at a council meeting. The December COW is December 7th, and the November council meeting is November 17th.
Time is money. That debt's clicking away at about $1,500 a day. I'm okay with a council meeting if they can meet that deadline.
November 17th council meeting.
I'm good with that. Councilman Fletcher?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do, too, want to say there's a window of opportunity here. I've said this before. We're looking at another project out in our, Park of Commerce right now that there's a window of opportunity for. This location has the potential to be the live, work, play destination for the city of Homestead. We have, with the commercial aspects and the tie-in with the downtown area, let's make it very clear to everybody in this audience and anybody who's watching here. I am not a fan of the way we have marketed our downtown strategy at all for the last 25 years. We have failed as a community in order to push the downtown area. And sitting up here and talking back and forth isn't going to change that. We have to help drive these folks that are coming to our area, and they're coming to us now. We have to help drive them downtown to help us clean up that area and make it a better place for everybody in this city. So it's very important that we take advantage of this window of opportunity, because who knows what happens 6 months from now. The economy could tank, or it could blow up. We don't know. We need to make sure we're taking advantage of these opportunities for us. And I look at, there's an area in Palm Beach Gardens, the first one I've ever seen like this. It's called Palm Beach Commons. I hate the name Commons, but that particular area is some very great shops, lots of nightlife there, and you have residential capacity right above it. It's right on a main thoroughfare. You don't see a lot of traffic impacts there. Now, it's a different community than us. We're down here on the south end. They can go east or west there. We have an opportunity here. We tried this 20 years ago, and it never went through in the Park of Commerce. We had an opportunity to do something very similar to this, and it didn't happen. So I just ask my colleagues to think that, there's an urgent need to make some decisions here, and let's get the respondents' information back to us in a quick manner with a quality product that we can move forward with. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman. I agree. The market is ever changing, supplies, costs, fuel cost. And it's my anticipation that whoever is sitting among us, or you all, in November, gives clear direction and takes a vote up or down on one of these proposers to move forward at that November meeting and enter into that development agreement. So, yes, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Before we retire this item, I wanted to talk about the big elephant in the room, the convention center. Either we have one or don't have one, and do we want to see it in the next presentations? In trying to figure out how to fit the convention center into the concept, I had just made some recommendations, and I looked forward to seeing them kind of researched and brainstormed on how to make happen. But I mean, obviously, the parking that would be necessary for it, where would we put it? How would we compete with it? And so then that's what got me to think about the property across the street at Harrisfield, and then also with the rodeo, what are they going to do for their parking when the property adjacent where they used to park is going to be developed? So, I mean, just consider for discussion purposes, if they build, or if we build a parking garage at the Harrisfield facility to help with the rodeo and with the old YMCA building and whatever comes to that, that could be used for parking for the convention center if we are able to fit one in at the old City Hall place. So conceptually, it's the only way that I think it can fit. So I just wanted to bring it up for discussion before we have the next meeting, and then we start discussing it then, and it delays and delays and delays. So.
Thank you. Oh, the related group did incorporate a moderate-sized hotel with an event space and did address potential use of Harris Field. So it's there, it's on their radar, it's on the table. That's up to HTG as to whether or not they want to address that. They haven't at this point.
Sure. No, actually, I think in conversations with you and I think a couple other commissioners, we also brought up the Harris Field option, especially because we were saying how crossing the street over, even if we were to build a convention center on this side, because then eventually, I guess when we were discussing parking, that was when the site across the street kind of came into the radar as a possibility for that. In fact, the current site plan that we have with the 200 units and the uses that we're proposing is meeting, the parking requirements currently. And I don't know how you can still meet the parking requirements ground parked with the addition of a 10,000 square foot room and the hotel plus 328 units. So, I don't know how that was ground parked, but parking is definitely, going to be a big determinant on whether those additional uses that require a significant amount of parking are going to come into play. So just wanted to bring that up. Again, it could be based on parking reductions that might be something that you are willing to do as part of that land use process. So
Thank you, I appreciate
that
that.
could be something that could be
No,
explored.
you're welcome. I think, just for clarification, I wanted to have a distinction between what was presented in related or in this applicant and compare it to what a typical convention center would be. So if we're fine with a meeting space for 500 people, and that's, checking the box for the majority of us who wanted a convention center, then that's fine. I just wanted to at least have the conversation, get it out of the way before we proceed to the next meeting. Thank you.
Councilman Shelley, I think you might have weighed in on that conversation. Would you like to weigh in on your thoughts as to what's been proposed versus a full-blown convention center?
Yeah, I mean, what I was looking for was, again, a way of getting critical mass to the west side of town without necessarily having permanent density, which would create the traffic problems. And so that's where I thought the benefit of this convention center would be. Plus, again, it provides the ability. Now, I never envisioned a large-scale Miami Beach Convention Center. I always envisioned something much more smaller scale, maybe a little bit more than 10,000 square feet, as far as convention center space, but, probably not much more than that, that would allow you to have something to that effect. The other thing I envisioned, too, was potentially combining any density that was built with this hotel convention center concept, so it didn't look like you had retail and then you had just a standalone density of a condo, townhome, whatever type of product, mass product you were going to have for density. It looked like a hotel that happened to have, half of it was livable and the other half was rentable, or, so to speak. So it was a way of kind of getting a product there that didn't scream density, but as well as providing some different amenities. But, that was my thought process when I originally proposed it, but I never envisioned, a full-scale convention center. So.
Thank you. Any other council members wish to weigh in on that issue? I'm personally fine with what's been proposed. I never really understood that location overlooking a 1940s era power plant and a 1992 Publix is the ideal spot for a convention center. Well, I think what's been proposed in the related project is a good mix and provides a sorely needed event space for the community. That will draw mass to that. Look, if we are a community of 80,000 folks, there's plenty of weddings, quinceañeras, birthday parties, and other events that will keep that, I think, as a vibrant amenity. All right, thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Next item on the agenda is council direction, car number 3378, discussion on the fiscal year 2022 legislative packet. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. The 2022 legislative regular session convenes on January 11th, 2022. Every year, the City of Homestead staff compiles a summary of state legislative and funding requests that incorporates projects from the city's capital improvement plan as well as other legislative requests. These requests that we have in this packet are similar to those included in past years, and some we came very close to getting last year, including the Speedway tax relief, breast cancer screening, senior citizen programming, water main flushing system, and in addition to many others that we have had over the years. And added requests this year include something for cybersecurity as well as a Rails to Trails project, phase one of which would be to secure the railroad property in an effort to create a linear park that would ultimately connect to the Biscayne Everglades Greenway Trail.
Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. I'm happy that we're having this discussion about our legislative packet. I have some concerns because it appears as if for the past couple of years, we make it all the way to the final round and then it's vetoed. Particularly, in full disclosure, one that is very near and dear to my heart, hence why I'm wearing pink tonight for October, the breast cancer funding. Makes it all the way and then it gets vetoed. What are we not doing right that we're not sealing the deal? We're not getting the funding. I just saw on social media, Miami Bridge, $100,000 from the state. Love it. It's in Homestead. But what are we not doing right? Do we need to have a conversation with our lobbyists? I don't have time to walk up and down in Tallahassee to knock on people's doors begging for money. I don't have time for that. So what else can we do to position ourselves to get funding? Because it's just not happening. And why are we paying and we're not getting a return on our investment? So what else needs to happen for us to get funding? Because it's not happening right now.
Well, I can't speak to the specifics of why these items are being vetoed by the governor. I'm happy to set up meetings with our lobbyists to discuss this and see if there are better strategies going forward.
I also think, Vice Mayor, and I know last year was very difficult because of COVID, and I know that oftentimes members of the council will go up to session to speak to items. I don't know if that will be effective this year. I think there were some pretty strict guidelines last year in terms of what meetings you could even be allowed to go into. And I hear you when you say it's not like you have time to go up there and start walking the halls. But it seemed as though last year was even more disappointing than other years because it seemed like we were so close. And we went down to the very wire. And as Zach said, we don't know why it was vetoed. But we can, and we will follow up with our lobbyists, and we're open to suggestions in terms of what is the most effective thing. Should we be going up there, what we should be doing, and just come up with a strategy that works better for us.
Follow-up question. Have we taken like a deeper dive and an analysis of who's getting the funding, how much funding they're getting, to determine, okay, what are some best practices we can implement to get funding? Which counties? Drill down to Miami-Dade. Where are the dollars going? Who are their lobbyists? Where are the dollars going? So that we can determine, okay, what do we have to do? And my follow-up question is, have we had a conversation with our lobbyists about what are some shifts we need to make in order to better position ourselves? In preparation for tonight, have you had any conversation with our lobbyists?
Yes, we did review the draft packet with our lobbyists. They provided feedback on projects that they think are likely to make it again. With that information, we're already starting the appropriations forms that have to go to the House and to the Senate. So we did have that discussion with them on there are certain projects that they feel have a good chance, and there are some that they believe are not going to make it this year.
And I think it's very important for our lobbyists to engage and communicate with us as well. I speak often with one of our firms, but the other, I don't know what's going on. I don't know anything. I think it's very important for them, in addition to connecting with you, they need to connect and engage with us and have conversations with us, particularly if there are some specific legislative items that we have in our packet. I think they need to have those conversations with us. And while they're in Tallahassee, if they think it's beneficial listen, reach out to this individual. Can you come up here next week and sit down and meet with this representative? Give us feedback on what we need to do with time so that we can prioritize and make sure that happens. But they need to be very active and engaging so that we can support them if necessary to ensure that we better position ourselves to get funding. Okay? Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilman Fletcher?
Thank you. Just to kind of follow up on that, it kind of begs the question. So we said that the lobbyist has told us that there are several items that they don't believe have any chance of getting passed. Why are we wasting our time on those? Why don't we focus on those prioritized items like the Vice Mayor's saying and ensure that we're getting the bang for our buck in those areas and we're not wasting time on the other ones that are not going to get funded?
So in past years, we prepared the legislative packet as kind of a wish list, right? We say if we could come up and get everything that we wanted, all of our projects funded, this is what we'd like. And then with your input and our lobbyists' input, they then prioritize, okay, these are the projects that are likely to make it, and concentrate on those projects out of the larger list But the reason that we provide them with all of the items is, politics is unpredictable. We don't know if maybe one of the items that they don't think is going to make it suddenly becomes a big priority in 3 months. So that's just kind of the previous strategy on the packet, although we're happy to change the way that we prepare it.
But Councilman, they actually do prioritize when they're there. And in fact, the first few that I mentioned were the priorities for last year, the breast cancer screening and some others. That's what they focused on, the ones they felt they could be successful. But obviously, at the end of the day, the veto killed those.
Well, I appreciate that, Ms. Manager and Mr. Good, but I sit here and I look at Homestead Miami Speedway tax relief. That has been on the books since 1999, and we've yet to get it passed. So either we're not doing a good enough job getting our message across to them, or we're just wasting time. So I would just ask that we all, collectively, let's prioritize these items. And I think we have to do that in a workshop, not sitting here, getting these a couple days before the actual meeting. But we have to work harder for our residents. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Shelley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. To Councilman Fletcher's point, I think that that's something that lobbyists have raised to us. Well, I don't know if the lobbyists have, but I know the legislators in the past have raised that to me when I've walked the halls, is that, they get Homestead's packet, and it's this giant, thick packet of, $50 million request. You'd be lucky to get, $500,000, and we've got $50 million that we want from them. And so it just becomes where they don't know what to do with it. I agree with the lobbyists. It's good for them to have an idea of what our wish list is so that they can strike when the iron's hot if the opportunity presents itself. But I do think our best chance of being successful is to, as a body, pick 1, 2, maybe 3 items that we want to shoot at and go for, and really give the lobbyists direction and say, these are your marching orders. That's going to be our best chance for success, because otherwise they're not going to have a direction, or the legislators aren't going to know what we find is important. So I do think it's clear that we need to make that list for them versus letting them make the list for us. So just my experience.
One thing we could do, Councilman, even over the next week, we could speak with you individually and get a sense of what are your priorities so that we're prepared for that by next week's meeting.
And to Vice Mayor's point too, though, I do think that, the good news is we're starting somewhat on time this year. A lot of times this comes before us late in the game. They've already got, we're already getting ready to start session, and by then it's way too late to jockey in position for the funding. We're at a time now where it's getting close to being late, but I think we can still make the moves. But I do think that the lobbyists should be here being part of that process with us. I think it shouldn't be you guys communicating with the lobbyists. It should be the lobbyists. It should be us. We should be communicating. We should be talking about it. And we should be able to hear firsthand from them exactly what it is that they think is going to be successful or not successful. I think that's a better way for the process to play out. So.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Roth? Councilwoman Bailey? Councilwoman Avila?
I agree 100%. And Vice Mayor, when you were going off your list, I was like, yep, I second, because it's so important. What are we doing wrong? Let's analyze, let's restructure our process and try to go for a different approach. And looking at this list, maybe if we focus on infrastructure and target some, heart-strong ones like my Rails to Trails, the breast cancer initiative. Let's see if we can fine-tune this list so that, as Councilmember Shelley said, it's not 3 inches thick. The last thing you want to do is try to expedite a file that is that big, and you have to make quick decisions up there in Tallahassee, and they're avoiding our packet. I think that you're right. Thank you.
So again, I would suggest that if we're able to reach out individually before next week so that we can get a sense of what is most important to the council and then have a further discussion at the council meeting.
Very good, thank you. I wish that we'd had that opportunity before this list got put in the public agenda for tonight. So I guess we'll revisit this issue. All right, Mr. Pearl, is it necessary to extend this meeting?
If the next discussion we think will take more than 10 minutes, we might as well do it now.
Right, do we have a motion to extend till 9 o'clock? Moved. Seconded, moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilman Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. Next item. Car number 3361, the 2021 Public Art Flexible Master Plan and Program Guidelines. Is that you, Madam Manager? Is that
Yes,
Mr.
it is,
Hennis?
Mayor. I'll read the item and then turn it over to Development Services. The city's public art ordinance calls for a public art program that promotes aesthetic values of the entire community and encourages the preservation and protection of works of art. The Public Art Committee, or PAC, was formed to help administer the program and make recommendations to the City Council regarding dedication, donations, and acquisition of public art to fulfill the requirements of the Public Art Ordinance. The PAC utilizes the master plan, which identifies locations for public art and establishes a priority order to the City Council as a guiding tool. Accompanying the master plan PAC is also submitting an annual work plan for fiscal year 2021-2022 regarding projects envisioned for implementation using PAC funds pursuant to master plan parameters. Staff recommends that the Mayor and Council discuss the proposed 2021 Public Art Flexible Master Plan and Program Guidelines. If approved by Council, this item would then move forward as a resolution to the next Council meeting. The master plan was created by the Development Services Department in cooperation with the Public Art Committee as required by Ordinance Number 2010-04-11.
Mr. Hennis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The master plan was formed on the belief that public art will enhance the city's image. Art makes public spaces more welcoming, and it creates a deeper interface with our environment, the places where we work, live, shop, and seek recreation. The plan intends to present the opportunity for an in-depth exchange of insight and information among public art advocates, urban planners, and designers, and the private development professionals in the community, and ensure a continuing investment in the appreciation of public art. Specifically, the plan outlines a vision for how public art can build on the traditions of design, community, and environment. It provides priorities for selecting and funding projects, the principles and processes for decision-making and insight that must be in place for public art projects to be successful, roles and responsibilities for partner organizations, the PAC, the City Council, city staff, private developers, and designers, a framework for the shared financial and professional resources that will be necessary for this community-wide plan to succeed, and recommends public art projects, project types, and initiatives that fulfill this vision. The Public Art Flexible Master Plan consists of several sections. Section 1, 4, 5, and 6, they describe the overall picture and defines the public art program and how it helps to build the city's public art public space. There are sort of graphics and maps within the plan that dictate where public art is to be placed. Sections 7, 8, 9, and 10 provides the decision-making tools and guidelines for how the public art program can initiate and evaluate new ideas that are brought forward by the city and other stakeholders. These sections should be referred to each year as the public art program is drafting its annual work plan or when it's evaluating ideas that are brought forward during the course of the year. Sections 2, 11, 12, and 14 includes blueprints for how the public art program interacts with other public agencies, non-city agencies, nonprofits, etc. And sections 3, 13, and 15 outlines administrative recommendations that will support the overall goals of the public art program. They describe the tools that the public art program can use to make it successful. As a point, the Public Art Committee recommended approval of the draft master plan at their July 27th, 2021 meeting by a 6-0 vote. And the chair of the Public Art Committee, Susan Sorrentino, is also present tonight and will be available to present their initial work plan proposal to you if you're so interested in hearing it tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Sorrentino. Would you come forward and give us a quick overview of the adopted work plan?
quick overview. You have the work plan in front of you. There are 4 major things that we would like to get started on. That's why I'm here tonight. City Council established public art program in 2010. It's taken 11 years for me to be here standing in front of you with the work plan for actually putting art in the public eye. It's very exciting. This I want to get you all excited about. When you put the PAC committee together, was a year and a half ago. There was 0 funds. Our priority was to put together a work plan, the master plan that was just reviewed with you. From this will be our Bible to go forward. This is very exciting that there's something going to be in writing that we could act on. We were told we could not put any public art using public art funds until the master plan is approved. So I really encourage you to take a look at it. And it's taken a year and a half for the PAC committee, with most of our meetings being virtual, to come up with this. There's 2 areas and 4 projects. The 2 areas that I want to talk to you about is we looked at many, many things, believe me. These 4 items represent what we narrowed down after looking at maybe 20 things to do. We looked at where could a piece of public art, something tangible that you can walk by, drive by and say, yes, that is art. Where could that be? And it's right out front here. This building is built. We have a beautiful plaza. So one of our major constructions that we would like to see, one of our major projects, would be a major bronze, life-size sculpture out in front of this building, honoring really historical. What is Homestead? Who is Homestead? We're not looking to do a portrait of someone. We're looking to have a bronze that's life-size that tells you the indigenous people who stood here were Seminole. Maybe it's a Seminole woman. Then came the agricultural people, the farmers. Maybe it's a farmer. And what made this all work and our community thrive was the railroad. So those 3 components will be a call to an artist who is experienced in making bronzes. We compiled a list of artists, and we will be able to put through our call to artists through Miami-Dade County, where they'll call their masses. They have over 700 works of art that they have commissioned. So it's really fortunate that we will be able to tag on to that. So our first project is for right out front here, the City Hall courtyard, a historical bronze of who are we? Why are we Homestead? We decided on bronze. We want it to be standing there if there's another Andrew coming through. It will outlive all of us. A bronze is forever. It's also in a place that it becomes kind of like Miami's Torch of Freedom. When people want to demonstrate or call attention to an issue, where do they come? To City Hall. Now there's something big and beautiful, and it's a learning piece that will help our children to understand who we are. So that's the first historical project. The second thing that came to mind is in researching for this, there's a picture on that same page of Marjorie Stoneham Douglas sculpture. It's a bust. And this one was an Art in Public Places for Pinecrest that was put out by Miami-Dade County. And I said, oh my gosh, what makes our community so beautiful? It's the people. The people that make a difference is what makes Homestead great. When I moved here 5 years ago, I was amazed by the people that built this city. So one of the proposals is to do bust sculptures of people that are important to our community. I worked with our historical department, Yvonne Knowles, Historical Preservation Board, and she gave me a list of current plaques that are around the city. There aren't that many, but some of them might have to come out of the weeds and become part of these sculptures. If you look at the picture of Marjorie, it's her bust standing this high on top of a coral rock. Well, Homestead is built on oolite. So why don't we put oolite as a column for all of these sculptures? And it will hold a plaque. If there's an existing plaque, just relocate it. An example of what I have in my mind is maybe the first one should be Crome. William J. Crome. There's pictures of him. He finished the railroad that came through here. We have our major street through downtown named after him. I think he should be one of the first ones we do. But all of the sculptures, all of these people that are identified as important people, as a committee, we'll send a list to you, but you'll make up more because you probably have more experience in this. I've looked through books about Homestead to pull out names. There's other books. Bob Jensen wrote this one. He really knows a lot. I've sat through I guess it was a seminar, no, it was a luncheon for HCA, and he spoke about the families in our community. And there are 5 generations of agricultural families in our community. I mean, it's really an amazing community. So that second project is to give tribute to the people. And it could come one at a time, and it will be a call to artists. There are some great bronze sculptors in our immediate area. I know one who teaches at the University of Miami, and he did the sculpture that's at Hialeah Park. That's Ronald Reagan and a life-size horse, and it was a public art piece. All of the call to artists will go to the list. We've accumulated a list of artists and through Miami-Dade. So those are the 2 historical projects we would like to go. The large sculpture will take a year. That's how long it takes. They sculpt in clay, they cast in bronze. It'll take a year. So if we decide in the next month or so, this time next year, we'll have a bronze out there. The smaller bust sculptures, just a month or 2. And we can have them, locate them, and it could be a wonderful project. I see when there's maybe 20 of them put around the city, there could be a walking tour for the kids. Let's go see and learn about our history, about the important people in Homestead. Now, the other 2 projects are more contemporary. The one that I'm proposing, which you have a picture of, is this globe of connected hands. I've seen this sculpture in a smaller size maybe 8 years ago. It always struck me. And I look at Homestead Station. I see that beautiful lawn with seating, looking at nothing. Let's put something in there. Let's put a sculpture. On the corner of Maori and Chrome, there's seating already in there. I did a little Photoshop so you could see what it'll look like. But the globe is 5 feet, so it's this big. And it's on a 3-foot stand, so it's an 8-foot sculpture. What is it? It's these connected hands making a globe. The artist calls it one, and all the hands are in different pigments of our skin. I think it's a pulling together of a community. It's in an ideal location that'll be seen by vehicles and passerbys, and something that we can all be proud of. So that would be the second one. That's a straight commission. That would cost about $35,000. Then the next part, it's so funny that as a group, and I need to tell you, we have an amazing group in our PAC committee. We spoke about a sculpture garden. We talked about a lot of different places it could go. And it was Jeanette Manfredi that said, how about that sports arena where they used to play soccer or baseball or whatever? She said, we need to put art over where the communities are growing. You're adding hundreds of homes out there, and there's nothing for them. And I thought, oh my God, this is great. So on one of our 4 pieces, the last of our 4 pieces, will be put in the entrance of that place. Now we're talking about renovating it, making a huge park for everybody. But there's a main lake that people on Kingman Road pass all the time. So it's vehicular traffic. It's a key point to put a huge sculpture that would depict something sports-oriented. Now, what we would like to do is eventually have sculptures all around the lake, a walking path. So people who go to walk or jog or just take their dogs for a walk or kids for a stroll can stop and look at the different sculptures and let them depict what we are here in Homestead. What do? We do race cards, we ride horses, we have rodeo, we have everything. Let it be a more contemporary look. Let it be a variety of sculpture. Let it be aluminum, let it be wood, let it be whatever. We can have Brito do, a plexiglass. It could be really wonderful. A different medium, different theme all around the lake. So those are our 4 things. Sounds simple. We now have accrued enough money to do it, just in the 1 year. We accrue 0.5% of building cost, I guess they call it. That's what we collect. Miami-Dade collects 1.5%. For some reason, in 2012, we decided that we were collecting too much money from our developers, so we reduced it. So we'll look at that later on. But I need to tell you that if it was by accident that you put this group together, you did a great job. There's Larry Deal, Hugh Hudson, Jeanette Manfredi, Robin Sanders, Steve Walker, and myself. You couldn't take a bigger mix of people. Discussions have been heated, but we have all come together on everything we worked on in a year and a half. Everything was passed by 100% after we really argued. I mean, David will tell you, we were at each other's necks a lot of times, a lot of days. A couple of you have attended some of the meetings, and I thank you for having the interest. And I'm sorry that I'm late and taking up so much time. But if you have any questions, please let us go ahead with these 4 projects. Let's start doing something for Homestead. Have any questions?
Thank you. Well, let me ask Mr. Hennis or whoever's the appropriate person to answer. Walk us through what the process would be, let's say for the life-size bronze that's proposed for somewhere on this plaza. Walk us through that process, just to give us an idea.
It primarily would be not a lot different than you would expect. It would be generated from an idea, a concept probably developed from PAC, the Public Art Committee, that would put together a concept. Staff would develop it, create it, put it together in some sort of package that would then have to come to this board to be presented as a viable product. So you will have the end-all say in that process of whether or not you accept it or want something else. And it's probably something that at some point along the way, once we get more familiar with it, rather than going through a very regimented, detailed process, that's not going to be something that you're looking favorable upon, probably a shorter step of a general concept of what they're looking for before it gets really well developed. I think initially that's probably the better way to do it. That way there's not a lot of effort put into it before it comes back to them to know that it's not something that you're really interested in doing.
Thank you. Well, what do you need for us tonight? The agenda doesn't indicate that we need to approve the master plan and the the plan, do we need to formally adopt the master plan or approve it? Ms. Pearl?
Ultimately, a resolution will adopt the program guidelines and master plan. So if you're
That's-
okay, if you're
that's
okay
not
with
bef-
this,
That's not before us.
no, if you're okay with the substance, then that's where we'll take this next.
All right, thank you. So, council, any questions, comments that need to be incorporated into that ultimate resolution? Councilman Roth?
Not necessarily into the resolution, but I do want to thank Susan. You're a champion for getting this done. As you mentioned,
Thank
it was
you.
2010 that this board and committee was put together. And I want to compliment Mr. Larry Deal for sticking it out. He's been on that board for many years, and we know the struggles that we've had, and Steve Walker as well. But I don't think without you as their chairperson, it probably would not have gotten done. And I truly believe and understand that art is very important to any community, and I applaud you for your efforts in getting this thing done to this point, and I look forward to hearing your ideas. What I heard tonight was special, and there are some good things that will come from that. Incorporating art into the baseball stadium, as Jeanette Manfredi had suggested, I think is also a pretty cool idea. So I look forward to hearing what you bring forward, but again, congratulations on at least getting this part done, and they'll bring it to us and we'll approve that eventually in the future. But thank you for your hard work and your dedication to getting this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for saying that.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Susan, and to the committee for coming up with this master plan. I think the infrastructure is amazing. The concepts are great. I think what we ultimately decide on should have some public comment to make sure that we are engaging the community, and what we decide is inclusive and sensitive to the entire community. What really struck me was the interlocking hands, and you want to know why? Because it's inclusive. And everyone throughout our community can feel connected to that piece and feel like they are a part of that. And I love the location. Just a couple days ago, my daughter and I were riding by, and I was like, man, that's a nice space for her to run around and play. But it's a little too close to the road. But that's a beautiful location for those interlocking hands to represent the diversity in our community. So thank you for coming up with that. But more importantly, thank you for your passion. You're very, you are an advocate for the arts. You're always here and pushing us and nudging us to ensure that we put this committee together, let you do the work, we have this money, let's put these pieces out there. So thank you so much for this plan. I'm sure we're going to come up with some amazing pieces. The important component is community input. So I look forward to being a part of this process, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Your idea of the community input, actually, it was Robin Sanders that had suggested doing a survey to see what kind of art people wanted. I think it will adapt itself nicely to the bust sculptures, that maybe we could put a contest out to the schools or something to do a little research on our history and come up with some names, just some names to throw off of you to come up with someone. You know, I come up with Chrome. Gee, that's an easy one. You guys could come up with some more interesting ones, I'm sure. So, but thank you very much. Yes, I'm full of passion. Yes, I have a big mouth, but hey, that's me. But thank you. I couldn't have done it without this committee. We have an amazing group of people, and one thing we have in common is the passion to make this happen. We're all frustrated that it took the 11 years. So if you can push it through, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank the committee for all their hard work. I appreciate your passion, Susan. I think that what you've brought to us is a plan that is structured and thorough and easy to execute. So I don't see why we would have any problem seeing this come to fruition over the next couple years. I would love to see some more tributes to our heroes and servicemen and women in uniform. And I know that my recommendation for the committee, Carol Housen, who passed away from cancer, I know she would be proud of what you and the committee have presented today. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Let's check in with one of our art mavens, Councilwoman Bailey. Are you still with us? No?
She's now,
Okay.
she attended several meetings, so she knows what we're up to.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Councilman Shelley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. No, I just also wanted to, I think it was 2010, that was Councilman Burgess. This was kind of his idea. He was the one that drove the bus, and despite the fact that a lot of the developers at that time didn't like the idea of having to pay into that art fund, but it was something that he wanted to get accomplished, so I think he'd be happy too now to see that this is finally, 11 years later, getting up and running. So thank you again for your leadership and helping to make sure that we're able to get art out there into the community. It's something that I've also always wanted to see, and have us invest in, and so I'm excited to see what you guys are able to come up with, and ultimately, as it starts to spread throughout the city of Homestead and bring art to everybody's life and community and neighborhoods. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you, Mr. Shelley. I know that you put in the hanging apparatus both at the community center and at the Seminole Theater that I've taken advantage of and enjoyed. So even though there was just a little bit of money spent, we'll use it up. But thank you. Now we're going to concentrate on three-dimensional, get it out where people could see and touch it. Okay, thank you all.
I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. I've attended a couple of those meetings, and you've just been dogged on getting this done. A true artist, true believer in the value of art, and I believe that over the next couple of years we're gonna see this first phase come together. A lot of potential. It's just part of a mature community, and that's been sorely missing here. So thank you.
Thank you. You say we're missing here. We're 68,000 people. There's not one art gallery here. So when you're looking at whoever you want for the old City Hall, keep the artist in mind, a permanent art gallery somewhere. There's a lot of artists in Homestead.
There is one in one of the proposals.
Well, just suggest it. They've talked about an office space for Homestead Center of the Arts. That's not an art gallery. We need an art gallery where all the artists in Homestead, and there's a lot of them, could make a living here with all these homes being built. They can't be getting all their paintings from Rooms to Go, or they can't be all going down to Miami. We need a gallery, just one. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so to put it in context, we'll just bring a resolution back. Yeah, Councilman Fletcher.
Before you leave, Susan, I too want to echo my colleagues' consensus up here, but I would like to venture out there a little bit further. We've identified some of these things that we want to do. I had a conversation with somebody earlier today as part of this public art. I think we need to incorporate some of the technologies that are out there, such as solar, where we have these public art stations and you have solar panels built into them, you have charging stations that are available for the community. There's a lot of opportunities out there to help incorporate a lot of the new technologies, and I think that, again, that's all part of that community, that we talked about earlier tonight. So I appreciate the time.
Well, in the packet, you'll see projects we're looking at going forward. We're looking at wrapping things with artwork, maybe art that we get from the schools. Our water towers, it could be switching stations, it could be anything. So we are looking just to get art out there. So we'll look into that. One thing, we want it to be tangible. We don't want festivals. We don't want it to be gone tomorrow. We want tangible things that we'll all enjoy, our kids and our grandkids will enjoy. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any further, Madam Manager? Mr. Attorney? Counsel? Councilman Roth.
Sorry, I don't mean to, but we talked about the downtown and the new development, and I've asked a couple of times, and just forewarning, for when we come to council next week, can we get an update on what the management company at the Homestead Station has come up with as a plan to get those spaces leased, if there's any new potential tenants for that property as well, because if we don't have cooperation with them to get spaces filled, other retailers and other developers are going to do that before we can get our stuff done. So I just want to get an update next week.
We'll have that for you this week.
Well, whenever. Just, I mean, I just want to be able to share it with people so they understand that we are making some progress and, the importance of the coalition between both. But if we don't have somebody that's willing to work with us on that project, we need to figure out what to do next with it. So appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. To the city manager, and I left, so I wasn't here when the CRA finished. I understand Sweet Delanes was referred, Sweet Jelanes was deferred, and I wanted to ask, was that the applicant requested to defer, or did we request to defer? I met with her on yesterday, and all these people were lined up, and when I pulled up, I was a little uncomfortable with what I saw. So what happened with that, and will they come back at our next meeting?
Yes, we think they'll come back at the next meeting. Something came up that we had to look into. We requested that it be deferred at the very last minute, and I spoke to her myself before she left, and I'm hoping that they come back for the next meeting.
The next meeting meaning the...
Monday?
Wow, now the next meeting is Monday now. Yeah. Hopefully. Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Very good, thank you. All right. Jeanette, thank you for being here tonight. Compliments to the behavior of your son who sat through this. Well, would he like to come up and gavel the meeting to a adjournment? Okay. All right, good. Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn? Moved and seconded, all in favor? Thank you all. Good night.